We have just a minute before we turn 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Well, or the first part.
Did you see it printed again? Good. Ben, is it printed again? It's,
Yeah.
They're different.
yes. I did.
Oh, yeah. Will you grab one for me?
You need one?
All right. Are we live? It is 7 p.m. It is Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. And welcome to our city council meeting. We are grateful for those that are here, and we're looking forward to having a good interactive council meeting tonight. It's got to be able to beat Zoom, that's for sure. So we have a full council here. We can do business. So we'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anyone that would like to lead us in that?
Okay.
I think that's a record.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'd also like to begin with an inspirational thought or an invocation. Is there anyone willing to do that? No, so either on this one.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we're so thankful for the many blessings that we enjoy. We're thankful for this community, for the citizens that live here, for the opportunity we have to serve. We're thankful for the beauties that surround us, for the many blessings that we take for granted. We pray, Father, for a special blessing over our country, over our state and our city, and throughout the world. At this time of this pandemic, that things will normalize soon. That first responders and those who are helping so much, giving so much of their time, can have thy blessings, that they can be spared and they can continue to work hard. We pray that we can have thy spirit with us tonight. The decisions we make will be for the best interest of the city. We can know the things that we should do and say to represent this city to the best of our ability. These things we pray for at this time, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Councilman Hamika. I'd like to say a few words right now concerning the situation we're in. I've seen things recently that have scared me, of people breaking the law, doing things that aren't normal. And I appeal to our residents and us that we obey the law, that we be kind, not only with our neighbors or our fellow residents, but our families. To hear that divorce rates are up, it just breaks my heart. Anyway, I appeal to you to think about what you're doing, what's going on, and that we can be an example, not only to those around us, but the state of Utah and our nation too. That we can do this, and that we can beat this pandemic and get back to normal. Anyway, thank you. We'd like any declarations of conflict of interest with the agenda tonight. Okay. Also on the consent agenda tonight, we have the minutes of our city council meeting of April 21st, 2020. council had an opportunity to read those minutes? If you have any changes or additions? Okay, we also have the bills for $255,537.96. Any questions or concerns on the bills? Okay. Look for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Miller. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second by Councilman Hathaway. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. We have public forum. Do we have any input from the public? Jason?
Yes, we do. The first one is from Stephen Charrington, Santaquin City Mayor and City Council. I support the recommended changes to Santaquin City Code 10-7-6 as proposed by the Santaquin Planning Commission. The next one is from Pamela Colson, Santaquin City Mayor and City Council. I support the recommended changes to Santaquin City Code 10-7-6 as proposed by the Planning Commission. Another comment from Maggie Hertz. I support the amendment to the Santaquin City Code 10-7-6 as proposed by the Planning Commission. The next comment is from Jeff Sitaway. Esteemed City Council members, once again, we have found a controversial topic within our city. Given the timing of this change, it is disheartening that we need to address it with our City Council. The City Manager and the City Attorney have made the claim that the proposed change to Santaquin City Code Section 10-7-6 is required to ensure our city code is in compliance with the state code and to separate the responsibility of the Planning Commission from the authority of the City Council. First of all, I've discussed the original code and the proposed code with an attorney with the Office of the Property Rights Ombudsman at the State Capitol and was clearly told that the current code as written is not illegal or contrary to the current state code at this time. Thus, no change is actually needed at this time, at least not to fulfill the purposes stated by the City Attorney and Manager. Secondly, I do agree with the Planning Commission as an advisory board appointed by the mayor should not have power over or equal to the City Council. However, there should still be some checks on the City Council's power. No legislative body should have quote unquote ultimate authority over anything, contrary to what the city manager stated in the Planning Commission meeting last week. If a change to this code is needed, not to comply with state code, but to ensure an appointed body of advisors does not have equal power to our elected City Council members, then I propose a more clear modification that does not give ambiguous power to the 3 City Council members to modify the zoning of our city and adjust the direction of our growth. Then he references Section C, looks like in our code, requirements for approval. Prior to recommending a rezoning of property, the Planning Commission should consider the following criteria. And then he's labeled the original criteria in the current code should remain unchanged. In order to grant approval of rezoning of property, the City Council must find that the rezoned property progresses the explicit intent of the general plan of the city and that the above criteria has been met. I think that is a draft of some of his proposed language for this amendment. He continues on. Is that not compromise? The stated intent of the proposed change is to ensure the Planning Commission does not have equal power to the City Council. With this wording, it is clear that any rezoning must be passed by the City Council at the recommendation of the Commission, but that the City Council must follow specific criteria and intent to progress the general plan of the city to approve any rezoning, limiting the authority of 3 yes votes from the body of 5 City Council members to entirely change the direction and intent of the general plan. I beg that you consider how the ambiguous wording of the proposed change can affect the future of this city. The City Council changes every couple of years, and we don't know what the intent of some members will be. Let's ensure now that they will have to work in the best interest of the city. The next comment is from Jody Reed. Dear Mayor and City Council members, after listening to the Planning Commission meeting April 28, 2020, I was pleased to see that changes were made to the original proposal to amend Santaquin City Code 10-7-6. I feel that the changes were a step in the right direction, but still do not fulfill the obligation of the Planning Commission and City Council members to safeguard the interests of current residents and business owners over those involved in new development. In the latest proposal, the phrase "must find that" has been removed from the code, and a reference to city staff was also inserted. I feel that both of these changes are not appropriate and that the council could fulfill the original intent and meet legal requirements while avoiding them. It has been suggested that retention of the "must find that" phrase is contrary to stipulations in the state code. But where it is only applicable to the ultimate decision of the city council regarding the rezoning and associated criteria, I see no conflict. Please explain why it is impossible to require that a rezoning action conform to the 3 criteria listed in the current code. The code could read, quote, C, requirements for approval. Prior to making a recommendation to the city council regarding the rezoning of property, the planning commission shall consider whether the following criteria are met. 1, the rezoning conforms to the intent of the Santaquin City General Plan and Annexation Policy Plan. 2, the rezoning will not adversely affect surrounding properties. And 3, the rezoning will not cause property, structures, or use of the property to unnecessarily become non-conforming according to this title. The city council should consider the recommendation of the planning commission and must find that the criteria in this paragraph are met before approving a rezone of the property, close quote. Rezoning is a serious decision, often accompanied by long-term consequences. If these approvals are more than extremely infrequent, it clearly signals a disconnect between the general plan and actual direction of the city, which needs to be addressed at that level. Thank you for your careful consideration of this matter and for all your service to the city. Those are all the public comments.
Okay.
Sorry, I had 2 more that came in while we, as I came down here for the work session. They came in before 5, so they are valid. If I could just read them really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
The first is from Laurel Zimmerman. She says, Santaquin City Mayor and City Council, I support the recommended changes to Santaquin City Code 1076 as proposed by the Santaquin Planning Commission. Thank you. The second is Hillary Fitzsimmons. Her comment was, I support the amendment to Santaquin City Code 1076 as proposed by the Planning Commission.
Good, thank you. All right, in response to a few of those questions, Councilmember Montoya has written a response. Would you read that for us, please?
Yes, I will, Mayor. As Mayor stated, I received several emails from residents this week, and I composed a response that I would like to read for all of the public and the rest of council and the members of staff who are here. Thank you for your thoughts on the Planning Commission discussion regarding the clarification in the city code for zoning changes. The proposed change was not to allow the city council or planning commission to more easily make a zoning change. The purpose was to see that our city code is accurate throughout and meets state code, which is our practice to follow state code. The discrepancy was brought to the attention of city staff by Planning Commissioner Brad Gunnell. If anyone believes that that this discussion is frivolous, I would ask that they please talk with the planning commissioners about that and continue to reach out to city council members as well. City staff was addressing this issue at the request of Commissioner Gunnell and Planning Commission. It was not the idea of the staff, and they only offered suggestions to wording, which is part of their job, as neither planning commissioners nor city council members are professional city planners or administrators. I'm very thankful that I am not left on my own to learn about the city and its many facets. Our city staff are well educated and professional. They are happy to help me learn and answer questions, but never tell me what to think. I do that on my own. I have never and do not currently feel any pressure to vote one way or another by city staff. They respect that my vote is mine, and I have been granted that power from residents of our great city. I will speak more to that in just a minute. The final product of the rewording was the decision of the planning commission, not the decision of staff. The city council, until this evening, had not yet had this issue on our agenda and has not been involved in the discussions of the matter. This has stayed at the level of planning commission until tonight. With the assistance of city staff, the rewording was tailored with the approval of planning commission and will be discussed by council tonight. I listened to the discussion of the planning commission meeting on Tuesday, April 28, 2020. And for reference, here are sections from the Utah State Code. Section 10-9A-503, the land use ordinance or zoning map amendments. Only a legislative body may amend the number, shape, boundaries, area, or general uses of any zoning district, any regulation of or within the zoning district, or any other provision of a land use regulation. A legislative body may not make any amendment authorized by this section unless the legislative body first submits the amendment to the planning commission for the planning commission's recommendation. A legislative body shall comply with the procedure specified in section 10-9A-502 in preparing and adopting an amendment to a land use regulation. Section 10-9A-502 further states, preparation and adoption of land use regulation. A planning commission shall provide notice as required by subsection 10-9A-205 parenthesis 1 parenthesis A, and if applicable, subsection 10-9A-205 parenthesis 4. Hold a public hearing on a proposed land use regulation. If applicable, consider each written objection filed in accordance with subsection 10-9A-205 parenthesis 4 prior to the public hearing, and review and recommend to the legislative body a proposed land use regulation that represents the planning commission's recommendation for regulating the use and development of land within all or any part of the area of the municipality, and forward to the legislative body all objections filed in accordance with subsection 10-9A-205 parenthesis 4. A legislative body shall consider each proposed land use regulation that the planning commission recommends to the legislative body. After providing notice as required by subsection 10-9A-205 parenthesis 1 parenthesis B, and hold a public meeting, the legislative body may adopt or reject the land use regulation described in subsection parenthesis 2 parenthesis A. They may adopt or reject as proposed by the planning commission, or after making any revision, the legislative body considers appropriate. A legislative body may consider a planning commission's failure to make a timely recommendation as a negative recommendation if the legislative body has provided for that consideration by ordinance. Now, please forgive me that I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. I truly appreciate the emails and thoughts from residents therein. My words are to try to help increase understanding, and I hope they will be received with the same. It is important to keep in mind that the legislative body of a city is given powers by the state. The legislative body, city council, is given power to make any zone change it wants to after receiving a recommendation from a planning commission. This does not mean that the decision of city council has to agree with the planning commission recommendation. It would violate state law to have the city council, elected officials, be bound by any decision of a committee of appointed officials such as the planning commission. It is also important to know that a multi-member planning commission made up of residents is not required by state law. If we voted to do so, the current commission could be done away and we could appoint a single staff member to be the planning commission. This is not what I would ever want. I served for 5 years on the planning commission and I look closely at their recommendations. I also read a lot of planning commission minutes and I have conversations with planning commissioners outside of meetings to try to learn and gain more information about their thoughts on matters and why decisions were made the way they were. This does not mean that I always agree with their recommendations. Of course, city council members are voted in by residents and they are held accountable by the ballot box. This is why learning as much as possible about candidates is vital. I understand why residents are under the impression that the code ought to read, quote, must find that, end quote. But that would hinder the ability of the city council to make decisions by voting their conscience. I take that responsibility very seriously. While not all residents may agree with the decision I make on my vote, I research, study, read, ask questions, listen, and vote my conscience. I must look at what is best for the entire city when making decisions. I must consider budgets, needs of departments, needs of residents, how to encourage business in Santaquin so that we can continue to offer services without increasing the burden placed on residents. How to protect our agriculture while allowing growth in the city because we cannot legally prevent growth. We can just try to manage it as wisely as possible with the information we have at the time a decision is made. I must not allow myself to vote because of just what one portion of the residents want or don't want. I am not perfect and I do the very best job I know how to do and continue learning. Most residents are not aware that I spend about 20 hours a week on city business. I love what I do and I am learning what I am learning most of the time. I serve because I love Santaquin and I believe in service to my community and my fellow men. Now to speak to the general plan is a guiding document. It is not legally binding. A general plan could be a single page and meet state requirements as long as it held certain required sections, such as moderate income housing. I helped write the current general plan and I am familiar enough with it to know that there are portions which are now outdated and we are going to update the plan. I would like to see this process started as soon as possible, but it is not only up to me. The council as a whole will decide when to begin. I would like tremendous community participation in the process of updating the general plan, just like we had 5 years ago. This helps to understand the direction which city residents would like city growth and progress to take. And I completely agree with residents that any zone change is a serious decision and must not be taken lightly. As listed above, there are always many factors to consider. Sincerely, Councilmember Betsy Montoya.
Thank you. I hope that reflects the feelings of all of us as being elected officials and what we're really trying to do here. Staff, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. All right. If there isn't any other public forum items, we have the May Volunteer of the Month Award, the dinosaurs. I think we have a picture of them. I had the opportunity to meet with a few of them the other night and present them with their awards so they wouldn't have to be here tonight. And that's them there.
I have a little write up if you like that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Mayor Volunteer of the Month, or May Volunteer of the Month, the dinosaurs. Self-named. Put back to the picture one more time. Shown from left to right, Ledger Harrow, Dexter Harrow, Blake Miller, William Davis, Vesper Boyd, Noah Robbins, and Bridger Ramtuzzle. In the back, adults in the back are Jim Dre, Leon Dre. Taking the photo with Lisa Davis, who's not pictured. Our May Volunteer of the Month recognition goes to a group of 8-year-old boys who have taken on the self-proclaimed name of the dinosaurs. This group of boys met twice a month to have fun and learn principles of character. Each has a unique personality, but as a whole, they are very united. For one of their projects, they chose to clean up the litter alongside of the street. Just because I didn't leave it behind doesn't mean I shouldn't pick it up, became their motto. They shared that care of planet Earth right here in Santaquin was fun and fulfilling as a project to do. Surprisingly, no one in the group had heard of woodsy owls that said, "Give a hoot, don't pollute." From the looks of it though, these young dinosaurs do give a hoot. The dinosaurs also plastered 3 of their neighbor doors on Valentine's Day this year with hearts and kind saying, just because it was a nice thing to do. Thank you to the dinosaurs for setting a great example of the volunteer spirit in Santaquin City.
A perfect example of seeing something that needs to be done and you get it done. Thank you for that. We also have on the agenda under awards and appointments, Historic Preservation Commission appointments. Being where we are, they aren't here tonight, but I've had the opportunity to meet with Dan Olson and Dean Van Osdal and Damon Barr, and they've all accepted the opportunity to serve on the Historic Preservation Commission, and we are grateful for the opportunity. And they joined with Ron Jones, and is he the only other one on there?
So far.
So far.
We're still adding to.
So anyway, I'd present them to you for your recommending vote. I look for a motion on that. We have a motion by Councilmember Bowman. Do we have a second?
Second?
A second by Councilman Meekum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we also have item 6C, City Council Assignments 2020. And that's really I had to jog my memory. So I'm grateful for being able to talk to each one of you and get the assignment straightened out. And maybe a change for some of you, but others enjoy what they're doing. So go ahead, Ben.
All right, for the sake of the public to review, we have a new council after our election in November that took office in January. And with that, the mayor has had the opportunity to visit with each of our council members to help divvy up the duties and responsibilities for our elected leaders with regard to the public and meeting the public's interests. Mayor Hunsaker, it sits on the Regional Planning Committee, MAG, the Council of Governments, COG, Community Development Block Grant Board, CDBG, South County Mayors Association, Summit Creek Irrigation Board, and its Org City Administration. Councilmember Miller, Mayor Pro Tem, he is over the water boards as a member, Sumoa, Mount Nebo, and alternate for the Summit Creek Irrigation Company Board. He's also on the Recreation Board and liaison to the Community Services over the Sports and Recreation classes portion of that division of our city. He's also over the Police Department as a liaison to that department, and will be a member of the Recreation, Arts, and Parks Tax Board, which is currently being advertised, and we're seeking interested candidates for that board from the public right now. Councilmember Montoya is our Planning Commission representative. She also is on the over the Community Services events, and specifically Orchard Days representative of the council. Utah League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee, and represents the city with regard to legislative changes at the state capitol. She's over the starter of the Youth City Council as the council's representative to the youth, and as well as we are working on creating an emergency preparedness committee, and the mayor's asked her to be part of that as well. Councilmember Meekum is an alternate or Councilmember Miller's backup for all of those water board meetings with Sumoa, Mount Nebo. As the Councilmember liaison to the Miss Santaquin pageant over the events portion. Also with responsibility and liaison to the Public Works Department, facing Santaquin Area Chamber of Commerce as well. Councilmember Hathaway has responsibility over the fire department as a liaison. Also involved in the community services over the Senior Citizens Board, and takes an active role in the Senior Citizens Department and programming. And then is going to be the council representative on the Historic Preservation Board. And then lastly, Councilmember Bowman will be our representative from the council on the library board, as well as the museum board, and the council liaison to the Community Services Department of the library and the Department of the museum. So that's our responsibilities, likely for the next few years. Right.
But if you feel like you like a change or feel a need, my ears are always open. We can work with them. So, but thank you for doing this. It's needed. I know that some of you may feel overwhelmed that way, but I think we could make it work. These boards, these departments need our input. We're not a director, or all we're there for is to be a liaison to come back here to our city council meeting and help them where you can. that way. Okay, we'll move on with our agenda. Don't have a formal public hearing tonight. Building permits and business licenses, Jason.
All right, Mayor and City Council, your latest numbers for new building permits in Santaquin City, I guess this would be specifically for residential dwelling units, are 74 single family and 19 multifamily, for a total of 93 residential dwelling units. We're right at the pace where we were last year with new single family. We're a little lower for new multifamily. So overall, we're about 20 less than where we were at this point last year. Any questions about new building permits or those numbers?
So are we accepting permits right now? Is business as normal?
Nothing's changed.
It's probably important to note, though, that many of our developments, their plats are in the process of being constructed and eventually recorded. So the number of available lots in our city is going to dramatically increase with the hills and other plats that are going through recordation, which then starts the building permit process.
And I guess maybe an observation of that point is the developers that we're working with, they're still moving forward with these development proposals and processes. They have indicated to us they are seeing a little bit of a slow in the real estate market, which might be a reason for the dip in the number of building permits. And a lot of that's partly because people's cautiousness with potential layoffs, furloughs, and everything else related with the COVID-19 situation. So yeah, but still development proposals are still coming in strong, and I think that they're taking all those factors into consideration as they're trying to pull out their crystal ball like all of us is trying to do. So, and then we have one new business to report. This is Curtis Cinema LLC, owned by Curtis Taylor at 226 South Center Street. Basically, he writes scripts and oversees video and film production. All the filming he does takes place at other locations. He just does the support work from home. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. All right, new business. Item 9A, ordinance 0501, 2020, an ordinance amending Santaquin City Code Section 10-7-6, clarifying the requirements for review of a rezone.
Okay, Mayor and City Council, this is a topic that is come up a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you know much about it. So I'm not going to get into the details and do a very broad conceptual introduction. I guess I would just say this is that this has followed the process for an amendment, which is had a public hearing and received a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and is now here for Council's consideration to adopt this ordinance. Really, the basis and reasoning for this change was to clarify the roles and responsibilities of both the Planning Commission and City Council. Both roles and responsibilities are already there. It's just making sure that the language we have in the code is consistent with those roles and responsibilities that are established by the state of Utah. This language has been wordsmithed a little bit by the Planning Commission. The language that you see up on the board is what they've worked on. I guess I'll just read it for sake of the public. It says, requirements for review. Prior to making a recommendation to the City Council regarding the rezoning of property, the Planning Commission shall consider the following criteria: how closely rezoning conforms to the intent of the Santaquin City General Plan and Annexation Policy Plan, whether rezoning will adversely affect surrounding properties, and whether rezoning will cause property structures or uses of the property to unnecessarily become non-conforming according to this title. The City Council should consider the recommendation of and any findings of fact provided by the Planning Commission and the criteria of this paragraph before approving a rezone of property. So the Planning Commission's feeling with this was, and this was a unanimous recommendation from them, that the intent was to be direct in the considerations that should be made and the criteria that are laid out there regarding adverse effects with the city general plan, annexation policy plan, and other impacts that a rezone might have. But to not take away any of the legislative role and responsibility of the city council. So I can answer any questions if you have some, but this is here for your consideration and approval.
Any comments, questions, council?
Yeah, so I've read through this a bunch and thought about it a lot and just studied it. And I guess my question would be, can we talk about it more and the actual verbiage? I'm not super comfortable with the verbiage is kind of vague in my opinion, and also tying it to our general plan, where we're talking about redoing our general plan. And I know we're not bound by the general plan necessarily, but it seems like it would make sense to figure out our new general plan altogether and then revisit this rather than pushing it through right now. Like it seems, I would like to have more discussions around this is what I'm saying. And have our general plan in mind and have that set and then look at that.
Well, certainly the council can entertain and go forward any direction that you so choose. However, the reason this came to light was because a member of our planning commission, who happens to be an attorney, brought it forth as, hey, this interpretation could be viewed as a conflict of the code, meaning that these past approvals that have been given by the city council, which didn't have planning commission approval, could arguably be considered contested. And that creates potential legal exposure. Now, I think that legal exposure is very small because of the three remedies. One, state code trumps. Two, the other areas of our city code allows for, this outlines the planning commission as a recommending body and the city council as the authority. And then three, of course, you can provide a cure by making a change to this. We want to make sure that the code is very clear and doesn't have any ambiguity at all, or could be interpreted by any member of the bar as something that could be contestable, because it would potentially put businesses like our grocery store at jeopardy when in fact they have development rights that have been entitled and approved by this council. So while wordsmithing and going forward, is important, the timeliness of making this change, whether it's our past general plan or future general plan, all of that's okay. You can wordsmith it all you want. You can take and discuss it with the council, but you probably ought to, at a minimum, remove the ambiguity that's in the code today.
Have we ever had any issues with that before? I mean,
It was brought up by an attorney. That's why.
right. Who's on the board? Brad. What is our?
I do think we need to do changes, and when it came to my attention, I suggested the other two changes. One with the
Thank you.
one change with the requirement that both bodies approve. I believe that that is inconsistent and not appropriate. And the other was with the word must in the findings, that both bodies must find in accordance with these three criteria. I don't believe that should be a must.
So, but what about the city council? Like, I just don't want it to be so vague or like subjective, I guess. I mean, if we took out the planning commission or city council, that's fine. I don't know whether I super agree with the wording, but that's kind of my take on it.
Well, and I'm not very good at this wording. I didn't write, I made the two suggestions
Right.
that I've outlined. And I believe that the wording here complies with that, but I can write this, I'm not. I think, everyone's certainly open to suggestions on the wording. I believe a lot of this actually came from the planning commission.
Yeah. And I don't disagree that there needs to be changes. I just was where it's just barely brought to our attention. I'd like time to discuss it and talk about our general plan before going through it. But that's my take on it.
Councilmember Hathaway.
I'd like to make a comment about number one, how closely on the rezoning conforms to the intent of the city general plan. To me, how closely opens up interpretation. Doesn't it, or does it not?
Well,
If you're saying who's going to judge, and I guess the question is who judges if it says how closely it conforms to that. To me, that opens up a broad, pretty broad.
Well, and it's even more broad in the fact that it's how closely does it conform to the intent, not the actual language of the general plan. And so really, this, as a recommending body, they are binding themselves. They are recommending to you that they bind themselves to the fact that they shall consider those three things. And they're going to look at the general plan as an overall broad brush scope and say, does this development conform, does it, on a broad brush way, how closely does it conform to the intent of the general plan? And then does it adversely affect other structures or other surroundings before they make their recommendation to you? That is what, so they're binding themselves to that. You then are then bound by saying you should consider, should, not shall, should consider the recommendations of and any findings of fact provided by the Planning Commission and the criteria of this paragraph before approving the rezone. So you can look at those three criteria. You can look at more criteria. You can look at city staff. You can look at other communities. You can look at what's being proposed in the greater good of the economic base. As a legislator, you can look at lots of things. But what this is saying above is that they absolutely have to, as a planning commission, look to these three things before sending a recommendation.
So their recommendation is based on those three things.
At least those three things.
Okay.
Well, we wouldn't want our general plan to tie them or us, right? Because we've had that discussion, we're always changing. So if we have something in the general plan that was 5 years old that may need to be changed, we're looking at changing that now. We wouldn't want that to bind them and say, you have to follow the general plan. I like it saying how closely it conforms. Is it
Yeah.
where we're headed? Is that okay? I like what I'm saying is I like the way this is written for now. If we need to look at it further, I like what it is right now, in my opinion.
Was the staff's wording a lot different than this? Right? Your
The
recommendation?
overall intent, we use much fewer words. I don't think it's vastly different than what the staff had, but this is much more claritative to what the planning commission wants to see their process and procedures before evaluating and setting a recommendation. They really do want to look at the general plan, look at these three things, create findings of fact, and send that to you for your consideration. And there's nothing wrong with that. They just are spelling it out much more clearly than we had in the minor changes we had. And it's important to note that the planning commission did not support our prior language, but with these changes became unified 100% support of it. The one concern that came up in the public comment was, and I don't see it in here actually, is with the support of city staff. I guess maybe that came out. No, it was-
No, maybe in there. I think
the planning commission, and I'm not sure how that didn't make that in there, but anyway, it was the planning commission with the support of city staff. And if it's fine that it's not in there, I'm not sure why it's not in there, but it's fine that it's not in there because when we said by the support of the city staff, what that really meant is the planning commission could tap into and use the resources for us to do research on their behalf. That goes without saying. Anytime the planning commission or the city council wants us to do work on their behalf, we do that. If you want to be explicit with that or not, but I'm just.
I think it's not even, it was an addition, a proposed addition that then came out. So the underlying strikeout that you've got here is just the underlying strikeout to the existing code.
it should be up there underlined in blue. I remember we talked about it. I can't remember if we took it out or.
But it wasn't in the original code or in
No,
what ended
it
up in
wasn't.
that.
It was just so that they knew that they could come and ask city support. So if you want to make that change by motion, but either way, it goes without saying that we would support it. The planning commission or the council.
It doesn't have to be there, right?
No.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a couple of comments?
Sure, go ahead.
Some comments have been made up about the Utah state property rights ombudsman. So from the website of the same, this I'd like to read two statements. Any citizen may petition their local government to consider a change to zoning ordinances. Local governments have wide latitude to adopt and amend zoning ordinances as part of their authority to promote the public welfare. Unless it can be shown that the zoning ordinance does not advance the general welfare, or that the ordinance violates constitutional rights or some other controlling statute, the regulation will be upheld. And another statement, interpretation of ordinances. The interpretation of ordinances advisory opinion topic includes how local governments interpret and apply their ordinance and laws. Often, a land use decision turns on how an ordinance is interpreted. Interpretation of ordinance is not on the list of advisory opinion topics found in section 13-43-205, but it is an important aspect of land use and it may be addressed in conjunction with another topic. So the reason that I wanted to specifically point those out was because, and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Gunnell, but I think that this was brought to our attention as a possible conflict in how the current code could be interpreted, and that just like the Ombudsman website states, a land use decision turns on how an ordinance is interpreted. And so I'm pleased with these changes. I'm pleased with the work that the Planning Commission did on these with the support of staff. And with that, I would call for the question.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt or approve.
Either one.
Okay. Adopt ordinance number 05-01-2020, an ordinance amending Santaquin City Code to clarify the requirements for review of a rezone, providing for codification, correction of Scrivener's errors, severability, and an effective date for the ordinance.
Should we add anything to that?
Do you want to add?
Do you want to add to that? Okay. We have a motion by Councilmember Montoya. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
We have a second by Councilman Miller. Any further discussion on this ordinance? If not, Councilman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilmember Montoya.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman.
No, for now, I would like to still discuss it.
Councilman Miller.
Aye.
And Councilman Handler.
No.
Okay, that passed 3-2. On to the next, item 9B, discussion and possible action regarding installation of a clock tower at the 400 East Main Street Plaza Park. Jason?
All right, Mayor and Council, this is something I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. I've been in communication with a representative from the Verdon Company who's based out of Ohio. Don Hartman is the representative that I've been coordinating with, and this company specializes in clock towers and things of that nature. At the last meeting, we brought to you a tower that we thought would look nice in the corner plaza, in which we thought that the council would fit the council's thoughts and feelings and criteria for what they wanted that amenity to look like. The picture up there is pretty close to what we would that we proposed last week, and council advised staff to come back with a list of bells and whistles, if you will, of things that could be added or taken away from that clock tower to give you the full discretion of what that tower looks like. So what you see up on the screen there is basically a 30-foot tower. It has 4 clock faces that would be backlit. It's got a standing seam roof. That picture does show bells, but the proposal that we had did not have any bells. There's no carillon system. Carillon system is the system that projects sound, chimes, and whatnot. There's also decorative rings, if you can see below the clock, kind of in that horizontal crossbars, there's a little bit of detail added there. And then the Verdon company would install the clock tower. So that's the base cost. And again, all the costs that we have at this point are only estimates at this point. We would need to get an official cost projection or official quote from them in order to give you accurate numbers. But with that said, a couple different things that you could look at. If you were to take those decorative rings out, that would be a savings of $2,500. Changing the color of it is no cost at all, as long as it is commercially available. Logos can be added to the dials. There could be a ribbon that's put there that has the logo. However, we didn't consider that because we talked about a logo being on the base of the clock tower. The decorative rings, they could be painted if you wanted to provide a little bit more contrast. We talked about the standing seam roof maybe be painted to black to give a little bit of contrast to it. Right now, it's kind of a steel, kind of grayish tone color to it. And that would be no cost, but the decorative that Ben's highlighting there, that would be $500 to color that differently and provide a little back center. Right. Talked about an arch panel on 4 sides. That would be $9,000. That could be something to dress it up. Well, it wouldn't be that. It'd be more of a solid panel that you could put the logo on, or something that would provide further detail to it. And he gives prices for the Carillon system. We discussed this a little bit. There's different Carillon systems that provide different sounds. The previous community that I worked for, we actually did have a Carillon system, and you could program it to play chimes of patriotic music and Christmas music and things of that nature. It was pretty slick, but it does come at a cost. The Carillon system would range anywhere from $9,500 to $11,000. And that's just the Carillon system. If you did have that, you would need to have a climate controlled environment to protect that system. So whether it be a little building next to the tower or something, you need to do that. So the prices would go up significantly if you had something like that. And then obviously with the Carillon system comes bells. A lot of times in these towers, the bells aren't necessarily functional. They're more there for decoration. Some towers that they've worked with different municipalities around the country on, they've either added real bells, or the communities had bells of their own that they wanted implemented in the tower. Or an option for you is to have what is called a decorative bell shell, which is basically a faux bell. And you can have different sizes of those bells, and the cost of those range from $1,000 to the smallest and $2,000 to the largest. But again, the recommendation that we put to you was to have pretty close to what the picture shows there. And I guess another thing is if we wanted to install it ourselves, there could be a savings of $4,000. But I think with their expertise and their experience with installing things, I think that's a pretty good price. With that said, another major option was whether to go with a 30-foot tower or a 40-foot tower. A 40-foot tall tower would be approximately $25,000 more for just that extra 10 feet. Our thought was a 30-foot tower would be some cost savings, but to dress the tower up a little more and provide a little bit more detail, to bulk up the base, we talked about putting the 30-foot tower on a 6 or 7 foot pedestal that had some brick or some other decorative material on it to dress it up a little bit. We have a couple towers. There's one in Pleasant Grove, one in Gunnison, that are almost identical and to not be too similar to what they have. A pedestal would maybe make ours stand out a little bit different and wouldn't look like we've just stolen it from those communities. So with that said, we're looking for the council's direction and possible action. We would anticipate that the clock tower, with what we've shown, would not exceed $135,000. And obviously that's dependent on whether there's things that you want to add or detract from the current proposal that we have before you. So
So if we add things, it's gonna be more than 135.
it could, yeah. Again, these are all cost estimates, so it's hard to give you a really detailed, but I think with what we have right now, we do anticipate there wouldn't be $135,000. And if you figure that way, then maybe some possible needs that would come from that. If there's things you wanted to add or subtract, you still could fall into that budget, but or that number, but yeah.
So that thing it won't exceed 135.
Right, and if it did, we would have to bring it back to you
Yeah.
and show you exactly what those costs are and why it's more than that. But I think with the 30-foot, 115, 120,000 starting point, and then with a little bit of wiggle room and some of the things that would be there, that gives us a nice little buffer to make sure that we keep it at underneath that number.
Is this a COVID-19 thing?
No, that is a good thing to bring up though, that because of COVID-19, things are a little bit slower. So if we were to order this right now, we would be able to get the information that we need to establish the base, the pedestal, the measurements of what it would need in order to be installed. We could get that in place, but it might be 6 months or so before the actual tower can be manufactured and delivered from Ohio.
I agree that they install it. I've always found that they're not gonna warranty it or back it. If something goes wrong, you installed it, you did it. So, they need to put it in. Dave, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm looking at it from the point of view of the taxpayer's dollar. Is this the only vendor? Is this the cheapest one we can find, or is this like the only one?
We have done searching and there are a very limited number of suppliers. And so this is where we actually went both routes through Pleasant Grove and through Gunnison and their procurement processes as well to be able to try to find. State code requires that you attempt to try to get 3 bids,
Right.
and this is where we're.
Oh, that was okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that's where
We did look around and it was, there's not a lot of companies that specialize in municipal clock towers. It's not like every city's got one, but they have a great reputation. Under different circumstances, I can show you their website and show you all the great work they've done.
In my opinion, this clock tower is gonna stand out. It's gonna,
I think it's nice. I just looked at it.
yeah, we got, that's why, yeah, I think we've got the best price we can get, especially the time that we have. So,
I looked over the list of add-ons and I wasn't really like, yes, we have to add that on any of them. So I'm fine with just kind of going with the base. And we're planning to have the logo on the
The Santaquin
pedestal.
city logo?
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
there'll be a sign not too far away.
Yeah, so I don't see the need to add, to pay extra for additional logos or, extra colors or rings or,
Well,
I
The
like
rings
this
are
one.
pretty attractive. All 3 of them that are out there. It's up to you. I mean, it's
Sure.
really discretionary thing.
Sure.
The other 2 do have room.
So are the rings located,
right there.
In-
The horizontal bracing.
in those,
Personally, I like
in
them.
those little,
Adds
okay,
a nice little detail to it.
okay,
They also have
Okay.
the faux bells. They're non-working bells.
right,
How many are
Okay.
in there? How
So-
many
I
photos?
think 3.
There's 3?
Something like that. But
okay. So I actually do like the decorative rings. I apologize, I misunderstood. I thought that what we were looking at was the base model minus the belts. So, yeah, I like the detail of the rings. I don't know how anybody else feels about the faux bells, but.
our thought was that the bells, if you look closely, you can see them, but they're not necessarily obvious enough to make it worth spending the extra money.
Yeah,
Particularly if they don't work or chime or anything, they just be there
Right.
for
they're
aesthetics.
just, yes.
They're already kind of hidden by some of the details that we
Correct.
talked about.
Correct.
We'll probably get somebody to shoot at it and make it ding.
One more, another question. So where I'm reading, it says the arch panel. I'm assuming that's the arch.
No, it would be an additional panel added.
Right,
So
so,
that's not the little arch that's right
no, it's
there.
not.
Okay, I was gonna say
Okay,
that.
so that's
An additional panel where they locate the logo.
So are any of the other things on the list shown there besides the rings and the bells?
Just the faux bells. The rings are there. The decorative ring note that you see there is whether or not you want to paint them.
Like the half circle.
If you were to paint them like if we did the roof black and then did the rings black as well, it would provide a little contrast and a little pop. Like in other tower examples that they had like a kind of a black clock face with gold numbers. And then the gold rings, or the rings were gold as well. So it kind of added to the look and feel of the whole tower. So
Well, I don't think our streets are paved with gold here in Santaquin, so I think we're okay. I like this option.
And the base that it's gonna be on, well, can people sit on that? I assume so, like,
Well,
it'll be-
Yeah.
the thought I had was to have more of a tapered base. And I think 6 or 7 feet would be good. We don't want people to necessarily crawl up there and be crawling up the tower or hanging on it that way.
We may have a seating platform and then the
Okay.
center.
I was
Right.
just imagining it would be
Yeah.
kind of cool, people,
Yeah.
could be multi-purpose where you can.
And that,
And then the center part will probably.
that initial platform might be a foot or two up, and that's where we expect the logo to be down by the flowers that are gonna face the corner. And then on that, circular base, then we would have the pedestal taper up and then the tower up from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comment? If not, I work for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a clock tower from the Verbin Company for a price not to exceed $135,000.
We have a motion by Councilman Miller, do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Montoya. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Item 9C, discussion and possible action regarding a term extension for the interim fire chief position.
Mayor and Council, I appreciate Chief Lynn being here, our interim fire chief. As you know, the city council, when appointing Chief Lynn to this position, was in the middle of considering whether we should go to a full-time position or a part-time position. We were also studying whether we should form a district with Payson and create a joint fire district. And there was a lot of unknowns at that time, a lot of transition that came fairly quick. And so we went through a hiring process. The mayor made an appointment for Chief Lynn to be an interim fire chief for a 12-month period extending through June 30th of this year. However, there are several issues that we would like to discuss. One of those is, of course, the effects of COVID-19 on even going through an interviewing process right now. It's a little bit more difficult in being able to have adequate interviews. The effects of COVID-19 on hiring, we're going to be going into the budget here in just a few minutes, but we have suspended the hiring of new positions that haven't been created yet to ensure that the budgets come in as anticipated before we expand the size of staff. And third, we just got our preliminary results back on our fire district feasibility study. That's the first step of many, many steps over a long period of time for us to consider a fire district. And so we're evaluating that, putting a committee together of firefighters from the front ranks to leadership within the fire department to go over that and really percolate that up to the council, both councils in their consideration. And then from a personal point of view, Chief Lynn is in a position right now where it would be advantageous for him to maintain the status quo for a period of time, since it's mutually beneficial on both sides. And it's something that is supported by both Chief Lynn and by myself from a financial standpoint. We would recommend extending the interim position for an additional 6-month period through December 31st, 2020, until we have more information and know where we stand a little bit more about with regard to COVID-19.
Any comments, council? First of all, I agree. Things right now, the way they are, the process to do, we're still a little confused on what's going to happen with COVID-19. And with the study coming back, getting a positive, it could work at this fire district. And there's some more info back on that. I think the 6-month extension was well worth our time. And Chief Lynn is doing a great job right now. And, go ahead.
I'd just like to ask, how do you feel about?
And if you could come up to one of our mics.
Which mic?
I'll just basically step out for a minute.
So this was something that has weighed heavily on my mind, but with the current conditions in the city, it's not advantageous. I support holding off for 6 months, 100%. I actually discussed this with Ben and asked him to kind of bring it forward. We had this other dialogue, and it supports the city, and it supports what I'm after, and that's what I would really want. So it doesn't hurt my feelings one bit. I don't want you to hire a full-time chief just to have a full-time chief and put the city in a position financially that they are backlogged. This also allows the grocery store to get open, sales tax revenue is going to be delayed to come in. The COVID-19 impact, it is the best impact for us, the best solution. So I support it 100%.
I'd also like to put forward that Chief Lynn also recently changed his work schedule of his primary place of employment so that he's actually here during the day more often. We certainly appreciate him trying to work with and accommodate in several positions. We try to afford a lot of flexibility, but he's done a great job in taking the step forward. Impacts his evenings and weekends because he's working now at the Provo for those, but it allows him to be here during the day and have greater observation to his crews here.
Any questions for Chief? All right, thank you. Thank you. Any other comment? If not, I look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to extend the position of the interim fire chief to Ryan Lynn for an additional 6 months, ending December 31st, 2020.
We have a motion by Councilman Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilman Hathaway. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Item 9D, Resolution 0501, 2020. The resolution adopting the fiscal year 2020, 2021 tentative budget for Santaquin City and its 3 sub-organizations: Santaquin Community Development Agency, Santaquin Local Building Authority, and Santaquin Water District. Go ahead, Ben. Keep it short, Dave.
This is a tough year to keep it short, but I'll take my best, especially since we didn't talk about it in the work meeting. I appreciate Aaron and the great support that he has given, doing a lot of fundamental background work and putting this spreadsheet together, and then all of the narrative work that's going to be going on in the background and working with all the departments. So, but with that said, our world is vastly different than it was when our city council got together. And initially set the priorities of the city back in February 8th of this year. For the public's understanding, the city council spent more than 8 hours here together with all of the department heads of the city, reviewing all of the needs from an operational standpoint, from personnel to equipment, vehicles, and also evaluated 48 different projects and scored and ranked those projects based on the priority needs of the city with regard to infrastructure and other activities that we would take on. With that policy establishment back in February and some other meetings that we've had where we brought certain issues up and discussed that with the council as well as with department heads and staff, we have worked to bring this to you for your consideration this evening. It is required by state law that the city council adopt a tentative budget. It is subject to change. Anything that you would like to consider over the next 6 weeks prior to June 16th, when it would need to be passed, it is possible to have those changes. At this point, it hands over the mayor's budget to the council for your consideration and becomes a public document as well. The public is invited to come and participate and let their voice be heard. This document will be made available on our website, and the public hearing will be scheduled and advertised for our June 2nd meeting. That gives time for the public to review and consider it prior to the June 2nd. Any feedback, it gives the time for the council to listen to that feedback before making a decision on June 16th. Concurrently, we also have our year-end fiscal budget for this fiscal year that we're currently in, that we do an amendment on the last day of business day of the fiscal year, so that'd be June 30th. What has hit all communities in an unknown way is what are the impacts of COVID-19 on our budget? And of course, there's been a dramatic shift in sales taxes, use of fuel and gas taxes, transient room taxes, and travel, tourism, not to mention the fact that there are many who are out of work right now, and what are the impacts going to be on them and the overall economy? And how does that affect the building industry in the markets? And so all of that has been taken into consideration over the last several weeks when trying to put this together for your consideration. But it's important to note that there's a lot of unknowns. And with that, there's really two approaches that most cities are taking. Approach number one is that many cities that are larger already had their budgets being worked on dramatically and had them somewhat in place prior to May. We're working on it with a more of a shoestring budget, and we do the best we can with the resources we have and the time available. So we've been a little bit slower in putting our budget together, but that means that we're putting it together with more pertinent and timely information. And so many of the larger cities are moving forward with their budgets with some changes, but they also have in it a 5% cost reduction plan, a 10% cost reduction plan, and a 15% cost reduction plan. So if revenues start dropping off, they can make cuts and they know what those cuts are. My proposal is to go the other direction. Start off very conservatively, start off with a very bare bones budget, and if money comes in that becomes available and we don't live on the income, we live on actual tangible dollars that we receive, then when we hit that 5%, we have a 5% restoration plan, a 10% restoration plan, a 15% restoration plan. And we can start taking on some of the priorities that the council had established earlier. It really does become a perception issue for the public and for our staff as well. I once worked for a corporation where I was told at the beginning of the year I would get this bonus. It was great. They told me how much. In my mind, I already spent the money. I was pretty young and I thought this was great. And I was told at the beginning of the year that 25% of the budget is based on me meeting my goals. And 25% of that bonus was based on my department. 25% was based on my division, and 25% was on the overall corporation. And each quarter, that the goals were calculated and accountability was put forth. And each quarter, I watched my large bonus, which I thought at the time was a large bonus, get smaller and smaller and smaller. And by the time I actually got that check after taxes were taken out of it, I was probably one of the most disgruntled employees, and all of my fellow employees were disgruntled too, because of the perception and the expectation that was killed throughout the year. I got my 25%, so I at least got 25% of that bonus, but the other departments, the other levels did not. And so having a plan where at least the department heads and the directors know that they can go in and they know what they have to work with, even though it might be bare bones, they know what they have. And then if things are more optimistic than they are expected to be or are projected to be, then that just frees up more money. And then it's always an actual surprise or a positive and builds that morale. But I'd much rather take an optimistic view of things. And so that's the direction. And it's also the more conservative approach because it's more bare bones.
All right, on to slide number 4.
154. Just so you know, our initial projections were about a 22% growth rate in our sales taxes. That was based on the fact that the trend that we were going on. We far outshot our anticipated sales taxes last year to this year already. We will come in above average. And then, of course, with the grocery store and things like that, that's where that estimate was coming from. We also anticipated about 300 to 500 homes. When you consider that our number of homes is averaged between 150 and 250, that was a really huge jump for us, but this is what we are seeing from the development community, as well as about 800 new platted lots and an 8% growth rate in property taxes. Our revised projections are to drop that down to 5.4% growth rate for sales taxes. And that is mostly because of the way sales taxes are generated. It's important to note that half of the sales taxes are point of sale. They're given to the city in which the sale is made. Although it's not a good thing that we don't have a huge tax base, the fact that we don't have a huge tax base is actually advantageous to us right now in that we're not having a huge hit locally, like let's say Orem is having a huge hit locally because of all the restaurant sales that are lost there, or St. George with all the hotel sales that are lost. They are having they're whipping like a trailer on the back of a car going down the road, crazy. We're not experiencing that. In fact, we're only experiencing the statewide average, which is about a 4% dip right now. However, grocery store sales are experiencing about a 26.5% increase. And where our decrease is offset by our increase with the grocery store coming online in June, we're actually seeing an increase, and that's great. We are much more conservative in our estimate. We're going down to the low end of 150 homes instead of the 300 to 500 range. Platted lots, 250. The growth rate in property taxes stays the same because what we're experiencing is always a year lag. So the 8% was based on a year ago's growth, just so you know.
Do you have an idea what that's gonna do next year?
Property taxes? We don't. Well, it would grow by, right now, property taxes do not go up for a city at all, except for by growth. Meaning that it's not tied to an index that goes up or down or anything like that. We get the same dollar amount every single year unless the city council raises taxes. The only way that dollar amount actually goes up is by new home construction. And so we would know that month by month by watching the permits going through. So basing the report that you get each time gives you an idea of the growth rate. Prioritization. How do we look at this budget based on the new information provided? Our number one goal, our number one objective that we have to meet as a community is to make sure that we always maintain our debt payments. We're in a very good financial position going into this. Our reserves are at 25%. Our community is very healthy from a financial standpoint, and we need to maintain that good, healthy rate and good credit rating by maintaining our debt service payments. Number one, have to do it. Number two, we need to maintain our level of service in our community by maintaining our employees that serve our public. Taking care of our employees and the people we have is critical. And so maintaining our benefits for our employees and maintaining a cost of living. Now, one of the questions that's really coming forward in many of the cities is, do we offer salary increases or not? Perceptionally and financially speaking, it's not a good time to be raising salaries, and we do not propose to raise salaries. If the situation changes and money becomes available, then the council can release that. However, maintaining our employees where they are following the cost of living increase, that is tied to an index at 1.8% this year. And that wouldn't take place until January. Although we're proposing to include that in this year's budget, that is something that would not be an automatic. It would have to come back to the council for your approval. We are holding off on the hiring of any new positions within the city. We're holding off on any merit increases. We're holding off on any travel or conferences, anything that would go out of town. Anything we can do online, save money, be more efficient with the use of our resources, that's what we're looking to do. Volunteer efforts, that way. We need to maintain our current service levels. As I mentioned that, the only way to do that is by having a positive and optimistic workforce, and that's because we take care of our people and they take care of our residents. And so we're trying to hold our service, we're holding any service enhancement, meaning anything that would be newly added upon, expansion of services, we're putting a hold on it, but maintaining what we have at our current level is what we're proposing to go forward with. Postponing any purchases until money becomes available. This is 5 and 10, 15%. Anything that has not yet been approved when it comes to vehicles and equipment. We know the requests are there. When the money hits, we already will have it tied to a budget amendment that's already set, so that when this hits, we can bring it to you. You'll know what, based on your priorities made in the retreat, these next items will come through and so on and so forth. And then prioritize project funding. The way we prioritize that is We wanted to make sure that we took on projects that leveraged grant funding. So if we were to get 75, 85, 90% of a project paid for by federal or state sources, and we only contribute a small share of that, those are dollars we need to allocate, because we want to make sure that we're maximizing the money coming in for those projects. If it has a dedicated funding source, meaning I can only use park impact fees for parks or road impact fees for roads, then I can't use it for anything else anyway. It's not discretionary. So those type of projects would still go forward based on available resources on hand. Again, it wouldn't be anticipatory. It would only be cash on hand approval of projects. Prioritize remaining available funds. This is going back, whatever funds we have that left over, this goes back to your criteria of the 48 projects you prioritize, and then postpone all the remainder. With that, I'm going to review the affected projects. These are the 48 that we went over. I hope not to be redundant. I'll go a little more detailed in this, and then I'll go faster in the others. But anything that you see in green is something that would be approved moving forward this year. Anything in red is on hold. Anything in blue is moving forward, but there's no cost allocated. It's a time involved project. And if it's crossed out, it means, or in gray, it means that we've already accomplished it this year in this fiscal year. And so let me escape out of here and go to this spreadsheet. So, and I don't have to go over every single one of them, but just to give the highlights, and I will zoom in. New City Hall and the evaluation of the new City Hall, it was the #1 priority of our City Council when it was scored out. Not only our City Council, but we also had our department heads all rank that as well. And you can see the combined points. It is the #1 project by far of our community. This is something we've talked about for many, many, many years with regard to a need for space for our seniors, for our veterans, for administration and community development to get out of this building and get into so that public safety can grow within this building. So allocation in the City Hall is very important. The #2 from the overall was the 450 South Stormwater Project. #2 for the City Council, though, is updating of our general plan. So in either case, they both are ranked up there. So doing the storm drainage project on that one is approved, pending your approval. General plan update. This is where we want to get the voice of the people in our general plan. We've changed dramatically in the last 5 years, updating our general plan, making sure our planning commissioners, our city council members, and our public have a voice in outlining what that general plan and our vision of our community, what should be in the future, is very important. One item we talked about just earlier in the, well, I'll get that in a minute. So fire bay exhaust system is an upgrade to this building. We're planning on holding off on that one at this time. Highland Drive Canyon Road and putting that intersection in, that is still moving forward. Rebuilding Center Street north of Apple Valley Elementary is a road allocation of resources. Updating our employee handbook, recruitment and retention initiatives, quarterly meeting with all of our employees are all employee-related projects are time only. The WRF biosolid disposal change. This is trying to change what we're doing with our biosolids and where that's allocated. That could be a cost savings to the city and would be time only. We've already approved the replacement of the generator here. We're just holding off to see if there's any grant funding coming in the next couple of weeks from the federal government or local government resources to allow us to hopefully have some grant money that would tie to that. Cemetery expansion option 1 was approved, but options 2, 3, and 4 are all on hold. 1 opens up the front area of the cemetery for future expansion, and that is a need. Salary survey market study is being taken care of this year. SCADA control panel upgrade is approved. That is our control mechanisms for our water system. Allen Park Fishing Dock project is on hold. Center Street is a grant that we received from CDBG with a minor amount of contribution from us as a matching entity, and that will put storm drainage in between Main and First North on Center Street. We're holding off on the outward mindset training program for our staff only because of COVID-19 and getting our people together. as soon as we get to a yellow or green status, we'll re-engage that one. Red Thorn Road Trails on hold. That's a trail system out by the Red Barn down to Cars. Cemetery expansion, option 3 and 4 already talked about. Trails master plan is grant approved, grant funded. Major museum upgrades are on hold, but minor ones that are self-funded from their fund balance is something that we'll talk about and is in the budget. Records management software, agenda management software on hold. 4th East Main Street preliminary engineering. This is for the widening, the 4th East going north. That's on hold for now. Fire department laundry room project, not knowing how quickly we will move out of here, that one's on hold. Ball field lighting at Orchard Hills Elementary is still moving forward for the lighting of those ball fields, and that's because it's a specific park project with park funds. 242 initiative is to study the Harvest View area, our south exit, and that goes along with the general plan. Cemetery expansion option 2's on hold. Main Street, replacing the water main on Main Street in front of the Family Dollar. There's a need to upgrade the infrastructure there. That is approved. That is using funding set aside for repair and replacement. Landfill transfer station analysis is on hold. Building access security upgrades, our business security we need to hold for now. Cash handling and audit procedures is a time-only one that we're working on. Sewer to the Red Barn. This is an economic development opportunity, bringing sewer to the Red Barn and to that entire region. That is something that the council talked about a long time ago, even before the Mohawk proposal was made to the planning commission and then to the city council. And so that could be funded by the city, it could be funded by the Rollies, it could be funded by development and watching it come forward that way. But right now it's on hold. Up for recharge recovery, that is finding a place of being able to put water in the ground and take it back out when we have high quality water coming out of our water reclamation facility. And that's a time-only project. The maintenance shed out by the Harvest View Soccer Complex is on hold. Employee policies and procedures software, the purchase of additional software is on hold. The playground at Harvest View is a project canceled because it is one we negotiated in through a development agreement that the developer will be putting in. And so that's a benefit for the city. Internal control, audit, and correspondence written policies, that's something we just want to enhance. So greater controls in place. Upgrading Center Street wells on hold, employee evaluation software, employee time tracking software. Installing smart clocks in our parks for water consumption. That's money we had available to do that, and that stays on water. Let's moving forward. Stormwater project on 2nd North is on hold. There's a power issue in our public works building. That one's already been taken care of. And then the fire department plans for a second station and cameras in the council chamber are all projects that are on hold at the present time. So going back to the presentation. So if you have questions. I'm not going to go in depth on the park, but with the police department, the departments all stood up and shared their needs with the city council. And some of them are project, some of them are operational. With the police department, the office space was their #1 priority. It has been for the last 5 years. That is the new city hall we're talking about. They had one additional officer that was approved by the council already. That is still moving forward. Part-time hours are on hold though. The court transfer plan we're doing in conjunction with community development with the senior. Vehicles are on hold. And then all of the extra requests for capital projects and funding, we're just maintaining the same budget that they had last year. It's not a cut to them, but it's not an increase. Fire department, office space is proceeding. The additional part-timers is on hold. Other departmental increases, other than the COLA, is on hold. There is a partial, we are putting more money into emergency management. This is COVID related and also a benefit to our preparedness for our community. So that's partially approved based upon the request. Fire chief position you just put on hold a few minutes ago. The PPE rotation, this isn't mask, this is your full turnout gear. Every firefighter needs to have turnout gear that is replaced and kept current. And so we're allocating $15,000 a year to rotate those out, making sure our firefighters are safe. The laundry upgrade is on hold mostly because of building constraint issues. Exhaust system on hold, pickup trucks, any vehicles are on hold. The software requests though that have been put forward are all approved. Human resources, we already mentioned the outward mindset classes. Quarterly meetings, we want to keep our personnel career progression and keep our employees happy. We want to start those quarterly meetings. Salary surveys already ongoing. We're holding off on software, updating our handbook. Utility billing and payroll assistance. These are some additional hours for our court and our utility billing employees up front. Those are included in the budget. Government building, need for additional office space. This is the new city hall we're talking about. It is in the budget. Upgrading to existing buildings is on hold. Security access is on hold. Additional maintenance is partially approved. The power generator is already in this year. Public Works employee power issue was last year, or this current year, and cameras are on hold. We're kind of doing what we need to do with what we have available. Recorder software and administrative projects. So internal control audits, we already talked about those. Cash handling policies, we can move forward with. Software, we're holding on. As far as vehicles are concerned, sorry for my animations there. I took the retreat and just updated it for this evening. All the vehicles are on hold. The equipment is all on hold, although the trailer for the large mower is part of this year's fiscal budget. The chipper, we're working with the county on them purchasing one and us storing it for them and using it when for our ability to store it. Sewer treatment collections, the set aside, we do currently set money aside out of sewer, water, and irrigation each year for replacement and repair. That's a program that started 4 or 5 years ago. But putting additional in, we're on hold right now for train replacement. Collections, this is the bare bones budget. Collections, the analysis, this is sewer collections. Analysis on heavy lines, it's dedicated money that's moving forward. Strategic connections, that's impacting money that would be moving forward. Participating on the Red Barn is on hold. Culinary pressure irrigation water. I already mentioned most of these. These are all projects, but the SCADA, the meters, meter replacement, partially approved. The only thing on hold there is the Center Street well. And then stormwater, we're hitting two out of 3, but not that third one. We just didn't have enough resources on available without the anticipation of additional growth. Streets, we're trying to maintain our annual maintenance budget to the best of our ability. We're instead of $500,000 to $700,000, it's probably going to be in $400,000 range as far as maintaining this year. And that's because of the drop of gas taxes that we're anticipating. That's one that will have. There's just not a lot of consumption of gas right now. 300 West is a carryover, so we're working on putting that RFP together, as well as a rebuild of the North Center Street. That's not part of the 400,000. The landfill, working with Bayview on the WRF solid waste transfer analysis is on hold. And the park plots we already talked about. Cemetery, we already talked about option 1 of the 4, which is just opening up this area. Community services, much on hold as far as expansion, replacing ball field fences, new tractor, scoreboards, all the poles. They do have a need for a truck, and we're looking at a lease program there. The seniors van is grant approved. The trails plan is grant approved. The baseball lights are impact fee funding available on hand. Harvest View and the parking at Harvest View, the playground and the parking are both developer funded now that the negotiations are complete. Harvest View maintenance buildings on hold, but the museum would like to make some small improvements. They'd also like to install a gift shop for their patrons coming through so they can start earning money for any repairs within that. That would be tapping into their own reserves to be able to do that. That's not an additional transfer from the general fund. Go through really quick. Community services, future projects are on hold. And of course, the other projects is the senior center, that will be part of the new city hall. Community development budget requests, community development, this is, if we really were having 300 to 500, we would need to have a second inspector, a third inspector. And so we're holding that to see where we come in as far as the new home construction. If you don't have the new inspector, you don't need a pickup truck for the new inspector or the certifications or travel to get them certified. However, we do have some funding that's partially in there for technical inspection services when we need to have someone backfill our current inspectors. Funding for the general plan update so that we can get a good vision of what the community desires and where we are going as a community for our future growth. And then the planning of the agritourism harvest view at 242 is all in there. Engineering, the positions are on hold. NRCS, this is about $9 million all together between the three projects of grant funding that are our former city engineer, current city assistant city manager is instrumental in bringing to our community with small matching amounts for each of these projects. The first is to upgrade the debris basin at the mouth of the canyon. That'll protect us in high water years and take a 50-year-old dam and make it so that it's meets current standards. The EWP, emergency watershed protection, that is based on the fires that we had and all the work that needs to be done to remedy the flooding that we had from those Bald Mountain and Old Canyon fire. And then the last one is additional debris basins, 5 additional debris basins at all of our channels coming out of the mountain region. And that is 100% grant funded for design and analysis and eventually for construction. The only thing that the city would need to come up for in future years is land acquisition. So great work there. Culinary irrigation master plan is currently ongoing and that funding will carry forward because the project was kicked off a little late. We're studying Eaton's annexation, and so that is a time only project. Recharge recovery is time only. Highland Drive, Canyon Road, we're working with the developer of the foothill subdivision as well as the property owner out there to try to have that intersection go through sooner rather than later. Every effort is being made to go forward. The city is funding the design right now, and we're working to fund the land acquisition costs and to have a reimbursement plan with the construction costs that would be borne by the development company. And widening of 4th East, we already talked about that. That's the engineering. So we already went through all this. So let's talk about the budget in general. And this presentation go to one more. So where do we stand as a city? Nationwide, what they're looking at is a 30% reduction in water consumption. And that is making some cities dangerously, I guess, in jeopardy of not being able to pay for their debt service payments and things like that. We're actually seeing an uptick in our water consumption because our people are home and they're consuming water more. So many of the aspects of the impact of COVID will be experienced by us over the long term. It's in the form of new home construction and whatnot, but we're not seeing it quite yet as far as the local area. And considering our grocery store is about to come online at the same time our sales taxes is dipping, that is another thing that bodes well. Something else that bodes well from our community is the fact that we do have fresh air. We do have just a warm, inviting, pleasant community in which to live. And businesses are keeping their employees home. And more we are seeing that businesses may consider keeping their employees home instead of building large office complexes. And so something that the city council may want to consider in the future is, as far as our visioning and our general plan, is how do we make it more inviting for people to be able to work from home and have more convenience from home one aspect that was talked about in our work meetings a few minutes ago is things like fiber optic. So should the city consider trying to bring fiber to the home? Those are the type of things. But overall, our city revenue is right here, as we've shown. Our sales taxes are still projected to increase. Property taxes are still projected to increase, and that's based on last year's growth. The amount of reserves we have in our general fund balance, when we retired the gas fund, we dropped dangerously low, but we have a little more than 25% of in our reserves right now of what we are anticipating. So that's great. It's showing that we're building our community. We have good solid reserves in there. And then as far as how proportionate we are set up within our city, about a third of our community, 29% is public safety, 36% is public works, 11% is community development. Community services is the area where we're trying to grow it the most. That's our formerly known as our leisure services, our recreation, anything seniors library, anything that reaches out to the public. We're trying to grow this area right now. In administration, we're at 14%. Side by side, you can see that with the reduction in the number of projects that we're taking on, it's had a dip in the public works, but other than that, we're trying to maintain where we're at and maintain the growth. We've had to take on some major infrastructure projects, from new water tanks to a booster pump station and road projects. That's why you've seen the growth in the public works. Not done yet. Lots of work ahead of us. Norm's gonna be busy. Don's gonna be busy. So there's general fund balance by department. That's where you're seeing the growth there. This reflects the one new officer. We are, even with the bare bones budget that we're going forward, we're still envisioning putting money aside to bolster our reserves, about 50,000 in general fund, 127 in public works repair and replacement, and then more money set aside into our sewer for repair and replacement and having more reserves on hand. The one that's really we're being extra conservative on is on the water, because of water consumption. And then this is the breakup with each of the departments. These are just charts that are currently within our budget of past years. These all automatically update with our budget. And I'll just go through all those real quick until I get to our budget. So this is the tentative budget, which is before you for your consideration this evening for adoption. This is the part that we made public for public consumption as well. It goes through every revenue source, every expenditure line item that we have in the budget. It has the actuals from 2018, 19, the revised budget, or right now it's the original budget because we haven't had any amendments this year. The actuals as of March 31st and what we're projecting for the new year. And it goes through, it starts with the general fund, it works into the capital project funds, it works into all of the special revenue funds and enterprise funds that we have within the city. And then there is a tab in here that we'll have available for the council as well, which consolidates all of the COVID-19 cost reductions that we've made, and those total a little over $2 million. So with that, is there any questions or changes that the council would like to see? Or?
I just have a question for you on knowing where the country is going at this point. I know you can't project ahead, but are you looking at a, I don't want to use the word worst case scenario, but let's say the economy tails off even more. Are we flexible enough to handle that if this drags out?
We are. So we, right off the bat, by not taking on a lot of these projects, by not taking on the new hires and whatnot, we're basically stable. We're making sure that the revenues that we have are going to be solid to the expenditures that we're going to make. If the money, if we don't have any negative effects that beyond what we've already anticipated, then we're going to be stable, and we're going to be stable with a good, healthy reserve. If by chance things get dramatically worse, we still have the reserves, and then we can take other actions that are necessary. But in all reality, we're starting off so bare bones that we should be able to just add on as the economy comes back. And people start shopping again and get back to work.
Just comment, I really appreciate this smart business management. Starting off, holding back, rather than doing what other cities are doing and just cutting a little bit. I appreciate making sure we have enough to pay our debts, and you're planning ahead. That says a lot about where our city is and why we have such a good staff, why our employees like to work here. And we're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of the city. We're going to be okay through this. That feels good. And I really appreciate that. Thank you for your work on that.
And Aaron, too.
I agree with that. Thank you, Ben and Aaron, for all the work that you put into this,
Now,
the budget to get it to us.
I know Ben likes to call it a reserve, and I like to call it a rainy day fund. You haven't tapped into that at all or anything? It's still.
We haven't really experienced a lot of drop yet because sales taxes and are quarterly in many cases. We're just not, and gas taxes are quarterly, so we haven't really seen that. We're just hoping that we don't get it, but planning that we are.
And if I can make a comment as well, from a state auditor's perspective, you can only have a general fund reserve balance of 25%, and we're at that. So we're the max.
He wants to eat it. All right, anything else? No, I look for a motion.
I'll motion to, that for resolution 501-2020. Adoption of the tentative FY 2020-2021 budget for Santaquin City and its 3 sub-organizations: Santaquin City Community Development and Renewal Agency, Santaquin City Local Building Authority, and the Santaquin Water District.
Thank you. We have a motion by Council Member Bowman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Who got it? Second by Council Member Montoya. Any further discussion on this resolution? If not, Councilman Hathaway.
Aye.
Councilman Lincoln.
Aye.
Councilmember Montoya.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman.
Aye.
And Councilman Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. That was unanimous. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Aaron. We'll see you in about what? A month?
There's a lot of work for Aaron and I in the days ahead to put together the budget. Now that this has been solidified, I probably should have pointed out really quick, Community Development Renewal Agency, that is the agency that you'll be buying the clock tower through. It's the agency that you've improved the road system around the grocery store. It's the economic development arm. The local building authority is where the city expends its funds. We pay that local building authority pays the debt service on the public works building. And the water district, we rent water from the water district and pays. It's all flow through.
You break? Okay, recess. Everybody okay with that? 5 minutes. Be back here.
I mean, that.
8:40.
Right out in the hallway.
Straight, you'll run right into you.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
There's another on the second floor and another on the third floor.
Well, you were.
I've been eating.
We'll get you all that stuff.
Thank you. Have a good night. Drive safe.
Thank you.
So,
I'll turn it to you, Mike.
remember that everyone's being recorded.
Hey, Nick. We're being recorded.
Live,
We're still live.
okay. Remember,
Thank you.
Study this out.
We're talking about general plan.
I turned the two mics up.
it's good until the very, the one was good until the very last.
I turned up too much to get the feedback.
When do you want to do that?
Figure out what I'm gonna do. Well, I mean. part of it. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just.
Oh. Yeah, well, you really said
I mean, I think we tried to do it.
And this is how I feel about the general plan. Yeah.
Basically. It's probably
I'm excited to go back to office tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, yeah, my daughter loves it. She missed it a lot. Whenever she sees these guys or person.
We're just sitting down. Crap, remember city employees who came off of Susie's desk. Yeah, right here.
There you go, right there. I think we have to.
All right, we're ready to be back.
Oh, I know. So I can. I'll sit down.
And then you're just gonna skip E, it's already went over, you just put it out there on the Dropbox or whatever.
In here.
It just.
Just so I have that special. Need to do it. Well, what you're looking at, there are plenty of options.
I know, right?
Push right
That much too big.
Well, mostly that's kind of the stuff.
I know, I know.
Because everything's together.
All right, we're back.
Don't you know, I make sure.
Hopefully the public can hear me now. So next on the agenda is discussion, let's see, it's item 9E, discussion regarding the Community Service Department's COVID-19 plan. And we talked about that earlier. We felt like that was good enough discussion. So if you have anything that you would like to add to that, you talk to me after or whatever. Okay, also item 9F, discussion regarding possible mining ordinance.
All right, then council, last time we started into this and it was getting pretty late, so we talked about,
Kind of like it is now.
yeah, we talked about sending you the questions and we talked about letting you look over those questions and think through it and hopefully we can get through this in your direction as we continue to work on a draft and work with Sunrock and Clyde company groups that are looking to do this type of work in our community. So I had to run upstairs. I forgot to grab my eloquent notes from last time. So just to maybe recap, we talked about crushing operations, stockpiling, conveying, and how what your feelings were about that, and importing rock, sand, gravel, and building materials. Basically, your direction was you didn't want it to look like a dump. You wanted us to make sure that there was no contamination, but you also wanted a little more information from the mining group. Hot plants, batch plants, processing plants, as a conditional use, you said, who will be doing the work? If it's someone who's reputable, it could be considered. Obviously, with this being a zone, anybody that would want this to be applied to property that they have, they need to go through a rezoning process. And so you'd have that ability to look at who's going to do the work and can go into that a little more.
So Jason, pardon my interruption. Are we going to go through the questions and then come back to each one to discuss them?
If you have more to add here, I was just going to recap the first 3 questions that we went through last time.
Okay, so may I share a thought on number 1?
Yep.
Okay, so thanks for sending these to us ahead of time to give us a chance to kind of think about it and process these. In regards to number 1, I think I would be okay with that, but I would like to know if it would be appropriate to have a list of permitted materials. Would that be legal? Would that be?
I don't see a reason why not. Norm,
Okay.
just ask them what they're bringing.
Brett saying
You know, we
Yes,
need
that it would
an
be
approved
legal.
list. Yeah.
that, so I would like to request that we put together a list of permitted materials, just because we don't want to end up just having a dump space.
Well, I think along with that, it's the amount of material too,
Yes,
right? Because,
yeah,
about the importing, what was the reason obviously they'll tell us maybe they'll tell us the reason they're importing this stuff. But we thought maybe it could have been to make something, to create a structural field or something like that. And I'm,
Ingredients for concrete or ingredients for asphalt.
yeah,
Right.
and I'm okay with that as long as it's just not this massive stockpiles of stuff that's not gonna get used for years, you know, just something in process, moved out. And keep going.
So there would be probably, yeah, the mixing like we've talked about, but also some recycling of materials. We talked about that as well, where actually concrete recycling and asphalt recycling is actually a good thing for our environment. It doesn't necessarily degrade the products that are going out. So those would be some of what we would anticipate, but again, we can have them provide a list of what they propose to do with that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else comments on number one? Okay, so on number two, again, as I stated last time, it depends on who's running a hot plant or batch plant, and I would be interested in a sunset clause. Like, what's their time frame? Yeah, are they planning on 10 years? Are they planning on 20 years? What's their plan? I would like to know that.
We've had similar conversations with them. One of the reasons why we have, for instance, a mass grading permit like they have at the existing Sunrock there is because we do want to know those sunsets and we do want to know that time frame. We've had this discussion with them, but this is a much larger operation than what would normally fit under our current mass grading conditional permit, for instance. So
Yeah.
we've talked about the length of time, but they're also talking about that it could be 20 to 30 to 50 years. And how do you have a permit that works during that time because again, things change, right? And processes change and requirements change and all that kind of stuff.
Along with that, Norm, this is property owned by Sitla,
Right.
and Sitla wants to develop that property. And so I'm sure the property owner is going to be pushing them to get it graded
Get it done.
so they can develop it.
But again, another portion of that is the economy, right? The economics of the
It needs to be the right
That's the force
kind.
behind it. It's the driving force.
That's
behind
exactly
it.
right.
So with that, then I would also like to investigate, also having a renewal period. So that it's not just we're agreeing to this for
Like
20
we've done
or
with the
30
mass grading.
years,
Mhm.
but that the permit needs to be renewed based on certain criteria, maybe every 5 years or.
So I think legal has some comments on this.
Well, I think the only comment I had is when you're talking about, it depends on who it is. That's really hard to do with zoning. It really needs to be, you set the criteria. What is it you like about certain companies?
Okay,
And then incorporating those kinds of things
okay,
into the zoning ordinance rather than have the criteria that says we're going to pick and choose what companies we allow in.
right,
So that's the only guidance I have.
okay. Thank you. That's a much more eloquent way of saying what I actually heard. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
Proceed.
question 3, the comments that you had, this is very much similar to question number 1, in regards to stockpiling, storing, processing, recycled asphalt, concrete, aggregate. Basically, you just said that you were open to allowing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just-
same as
just-
number 1.
Just to a certain amount, just not massive stockpile and bring what's in that's needed and someone else.
Yeah.
They
figure
better
out
be
what-
selling it as fast as they're bringing it in. We're hoping.
Close,
Yeah.
yeah, someone else figure out that number, but yeah.
Okay.
Kind of a question more than anything, on a stockpile, let's say they stockpiled sand. And a windstorm comes, is there a responsibility on them to keep that under control?
And that would be elsewhere in this proposed zone. And we'll get to that. There's actually a question related to that. Okay, question number 4. If a mining zone were approved and the zone was applied to a given piece of property, who does the Santaquin City Council feel should be the land use authority for approving mining operation proposals?
In my opinion, city council. I know there are pros and cons to that.
Can we talk about pros and cons?
Yeah.
Mention some of those. Let's talk about them.
All right, so, and me and Norm kind of, decided to play, go back to high school days and
Duke it out.
debate teams.
Debate.
So,
That's who you're referring
anyways, so really, I think that the cons to that approach would be that this is an administrative action. The rezoning portion of it would be legislative, but in terms of making sure that they meet the requirements in the zone, that would be administrative, and that might put you as elected officials in a bind where you have your constituents who are not happy about something that's happening with an administrative approval, and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place between we have to follow our code, but at the same time, we want to listen to our constituents. And so if you have the process and you have the criteria and requirements in place, you're bound to follow those things, and those are the set of rules that they're bound by. An example for you, the previous community that I worked for, they approved a land use related to alcohol and rehab. There was a home that was in a neighborhood that was 10 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. I mean, that's a typical home in Alpine. However, that's also a great candidate for a recovery center for recovering addicts. Well, there was a couple council members that lived in that neighborhood, and they knew that this was the law, and it wasn't even just local ordinances. It was federal law of people who are recovering addicts are a person with a disability. You cannot discriminate against them. So while their neighborhood was just outraged with the idea of having this in their neighborhood, they were in a situation where they were bound by not just local ordinances but federal law. So after that happened, they said, we got to get out of this. We have to. They actually changed the ordinance to make it more of an administrative approval process, so that they didn't, they weren't put in that spot where they had to wear both a legislative and or I shouldn't say legislative, but more of an elected representative of their neighbors and the administrative hat. So that's the biggest con that I see with that is just that you guys, being the legislative authority, would set the rules, and then somebody else would make sure that those rules are administered.
So the second item to that would also be, who is the appeal authority? So if the regulation is under an administrative act and then somebody doesn't agree with that, then it could come to the city council. If the city council is the approval body, then it goes to, I believe, district court. And that becomes very expensive and
So that's what I was thinking about when Jason was explaining, is that, wait a minute, I think I remember that we would be the appeal authority. And so that would potentially put council in a conflict of interest if we were the granting authority and the appeal authority. And
we can't be.
You can't be both.
But we would be removed by putting ourselves in one, we would be removing ourselves from the other. That's what I'm trying to say in a very jumbled and Fruit Loop way. So because I have a very open mind and I'm willing to listen and negotiate, I changed my mind. I think that that the planning commission should be the approving authority. That said, I think that if the ordinance is very well written and clear, then we can trust that our legislative influence has made it that way, so that it's clear for any future planning commission to say either this meets it or this doesn't. And we can trust them. I trust the planning commission to do their research, and I may not always agree with them, but I trust them to do their research and vote their conscience. So.
Well, and that's the thing, is that wouldn't even be a matter of voting your conscience. That is, these are the rules, do they meet them or not? That is the administrative hat that you wear. So, and there's some things where staff, either individual staff or collective staff in the form of the DRC, approves administrative decisions. Planning commission also wears that administrative hat as well. So,
I thought more of the city staff side of it.
So it's important to note here that, let's say that we do have a mining zone and there is something like an asphalt plant allowed under a conditional use permit. Conditional use permit doesn't mean we can say no. A conditional use permit means that they have to meet this condition and that condition and that condition and that condition. And when they do, we especially cannot say no, because then we open ourselves up to illegal. And that doesn't matter if it's DRC, city staff, planning commission, or the council. So again, creating that in the zone and allowing that, whether it's permitted, whether it's conditional use, whatever the option is for them, there is not an option for us to say no unless they don't meet the conditions. Bless you. Unless they don't meet the conditions, we cannot say no or shut it down.
With that said, and coming back to Councilman Miller's point, I would actually recommend that it's the DRC, not the planning commission.
Correct.
That would be the approval authority and the city council, the appeal authority, because DRC is made up of your engineer and your police chief and your fire chief, and they're gonna look, everyone's gonna look at it with technical eyes. They're not looking at it as if they're a political or a constituent, or I might run for city council someday. It's strictly technical. And if it needs to become political, the appeal authority, you guys are done.
Okay, I like that idea.
Well, I think it's important to note too, that your role as an appeal authority is quasi judicial. It wouldn't be
Right.
put your legislative hat on and use your discretion to decide whatever you want to do. So that's important to note that right now in designing and molding the language for the zone, this is your guys' exactly. This is your guys' opportunity to make this the best ordinance it could be. So I feel like we don't even need what's wrong with rebuttal, because my arguments are so good.
Well, I think your moderator.
Really recently.
Now, if am I mistaken that there's another question that they ask whether the local authority, land use authority, or is it going to be a state or mining agency that oversees it?
Yeah, it's coming out.
That's a different question. That's something, yeah.
Isn't it tied into this one as well?
No, this is approval, the other one's important.
Okay, all right.
And so and obviously it's late, we're trying to find sanity in holidays, but some of the pros of having the city council be their approval authority is just that you're more involved. You're more in the loop of what's going on and what's happening, and you're more familiar with what's happening in the community. But like I say, it's been for you to bear both hats and shine. Okay. Okay, next question. Does the Santaquin City Council feel that it is necessary for an applicant to provide an estimated time frame to complete operations and to provide a phasing plan?
Yes.
Those are two separate things.
Yep, so.
I don't know that it's necessary on the time frame, but the phasing plan would kind of tie into the time frame, in my opinion. So I think the phasing plan is more important than the time frame, but.
Well, the timeframe would be the sunset clause, but the phasing plan would be the time period within that.
Yeah, but if you got a massive thing that's 20, 30
Yeah.
years.
Norm, any idea how much material's there to be mined? They're not going to dig a deep hole, are they?
No.
They're just going to go in a level.
That's another discussion that we've had with them that's not on here, but it's more of a technical side. They're like, we don't really feel like we need to give you the kind of detail that we have in a mass grading permit. And we've said, well, we understand that, and that's probably an accurate statement, but at the same time, we want to know what it's going to look like, and that it's not going to be a great big hole. That's part of the discussion that we've been having with them, is we still need some detail to understand that we're not going to get a, for lack of a better term, a Kennecott. Obviously, that's a lot bigger scale than what they have. But
Well, if I was Sitla, I wouldn't want that
Right.
to happen either.
right.
So are they going to monitor, or is it all up to the city to monitor?
That's question 6, right?
Right.
Well,
And
Yeah.
again,
Why I'm talking Sitla.
So again, we're talking a very long-term operation. So having, for instance, one of their arguments, and I'm not on their side necessarily on this, but I can understand it. One of their arguments is we're going to go in and put millions of dollars worth of infrastructure in a conveyor belt over the railroad tracks, for instance, possibly, rather than trucking over the railroad tracks. It would be much safer if they had a conveyor belt system. we're gonna go in and put millions of dollars in the ground and then you want us to come back and have you be able to tell us that we can't use that millions of dollars worth of infrastructure after 5 years. That's kind of some of their concerns. So again, I think we can find a balance there. I think we can figure that out. But that's kind of where they're coming from in saying, that's like us building a $5 million road over there, and then in 5 years, you guys tell us we can't use it. Which again, as long as they're meeting the requirements, then we're not gonna have a problem, right?
Wouldn't they need permission from like Union Pacific or something?
Yeah, that's a whole other story, and they're actually working on that on their side, but that's not for us to approve or not approve. That's not part of where we're at. That's Union Pacific's
Well,
purview.
that just adds to the level of effort that they
Right.
need to make this work. It's a risk factor for them that they don't want to be bound for at least 5 years because that opens up, that creates a feeling that they might be able to, be shut down because of certain things or because a different council doesn't like what's going on there or something like that. So
Understandable.
I think this is also maybe a good time to know that this is not just a spot zone for Sun Rock Pipe Company on the civil property. This is a broad zone that could be applied to other operations. So it's good to think generally how this can be applied to other proposals.
And that's why I think the phasing plan is more important than the timeframe, because the phasing plan will get you some type of timeframe.
So other proposals within the city limit.
Other proposals that are zoned M1 zone,
That would be rezoned.
yeah.
Nothing's currently, this is a new zone, so.
You get to choose where you want to apply this or where you don't want to apply it.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Up
Thank
front.
you for that clarification.
Yeah, up front.
And it's probably important, it's not necessarily rezone, it would be an application of this zone on a potential annexation, right?
Yeah, and that's this particular situation, but yeah, this zone could be applied anywhere, whether it's in the city or in an annexation application. Okay, so you like phasing, but timeframe's not necessarily. You concur with those thoughts? Sure. Okay. Question 6, does the Santaquin City Council desire to have local control over impacts such as dust, noise, odor, etc., even though these impacts are regulated by state entities? The Santaquin staff does not have the means and or expertise to enforce such regulations. So the reason for this question is because there are so many different entities that they are going to be bound to whether we require regulations on dust, noise, odor. I mean, the Department of Air Quality, DOGM, all these different entities are going to look at it. However, with that said, those entities might be up in Salt Lake or something, and they're not going to have that local connection to the impacts of dust, noise, odor. The second part of this question is enforcement of that is not as easy as it sounds. I mean, when you're talking dust, is it just a judgment call, or is it, people who usually regulate dust do what's called an opacity test, where basically it has to do with how far you can see through the area. If you have all this dust, I may not be able to see completely as normal. There's tools and instruments that they have that measure that. That is beyond our expertise. We don't have those tools or measures to do that. So having that there makes it tricky, because while it's there, we just don't know how to enforce it. I know Chief Hurst has also expressed, concerns of, we talk about noise, like how do we measure that, and how's that going to be enforced? So again, with that said, that's the concern that the other group is having, is they're like, these are going to be enforced anyways, and we've come back with them and said, yeah, but we feel that local control is something that would be important. So we're looking for council's direction on that.
This is my feelings, and I have very strong feelings against or on this topic, because I dealt with this in the industry that I am in. Luckily, it didn't get changed, but I think we do not have control, and we do not want to have control, and we rely on these other people. Yes, I understand that they're going to be in Salt Lake. Yes, I understand they're going to be a distance away, but we're going to build relationships with not only them and these people that we can help maintain this. We will have city staff who can be part of this. We're not asking to turn the other direction. We're not asking you not to go out there.
build a good relationship, have a good relationship. When concerns are risen or arise, we address them. And we go to the correct authority. But I do not think we're gonna have time, desire, or energy, resources to spend time to do this. Work with the departments that have to do this. And let's do it. I think we had a great, or I think we still do, maybe we don't, but Sunrock, I thought we had a good relationship. And they came in and we had some stuff, we had some conversations. And our concerns and needs were addressed. And hey, the road's dirty, well, okay, we'll get a sweeper here more often, you know, and I think we can still do that with having someone else be in control.
Yeah.
I agree.
Agree 100%. I too have been through some of that, and the organizations, the things they have to go through to be licensed, to do the things they do, it's almost foolish for us to say we know more.
Norm, what do you think?
They need to.
So there's two schools of thought. I think that within the last couple of years, when we've considered this, we wanted local control because we didn't feel like that we could rely on somebody in Salt Lake or Ogden or whatever to enforce, right? But then there's the other side of it is, I mean, just as an example, one of the items that the Planning Commission has added to the current wording that we have is seismic testing. You can't go over some. I'm not a seismologist. I can do a lot of things, but I'm not a seismologist. Who's gonna have the tools and the equipment and the expertise to go out and do that? So they are, that's exactly right. And so.
Well, if it shakes Mrs. Jones' window downtown, it's over the seismic limit.
Right.
But
But again, there's
yeah,
two schools of thought there. I believe that the previous council, some of them that are still here, but the previous 5 council members and staff kind of wanted to have that close to the vest and have some local control. But I think the more that we've thought about that and the more that we've looked at the reality of it, we don't have the resources, we don't have the training. That's something that, for instance, Dogham or MSHA or, Division of Environmental Quality, whoever it is, whether it's air quality or water quality, or they have that expertise. And if we have a problem, we should be relying on them and building those relationships to call them up and say, hey, we have a problem down here. Can you come down and take a look at it and solve the problem for us?
Now, the planning commission spent a lot of time on this, and to convey some of their feelings on that, their thought was that, yes, these miners are going to be the experts on this and going to have the tools to do that. Their intention was that with this was to have them measure it, but then report it to us so that we can verify that it's under a certain limit. So it's a difficult topic because there are those two schools of thought, but
And that is something that we could do. We could have that in our ordinance that they provide. When we do that right now with some of our projects where they provide testing and provide us with the results.
Sure.
They could have we could have those same requirements on them that they give us the environmental quality reports that they turn into the state. They've indicated that when they do blasting that I believe this company does some measurements of some sort to make sure that we're not having vibration problems and that kind of stuff. I don't fully understand it, but they indicated that they do have some of that. We could ask for that reporting. Yeah. Well, it's a liability concern. They better.
I've gone round and round and round on this question, because this issue first came to planning commission when I was still on planning commission. And I've really come to appreciate, my personal preference is to think of it as local authority rather than control. Just because there's so many things, there are certain things we can control, there are certain things that we cannot control, but we have a certain level of authority that is established, right? So I've really come to appreciate that our level of authority is to if we choose to move forward, is to create a very clear and well-written ordinance.
Right.
That's our level of authority.
Correct.
So for other things that fall to divisions of state, like DAWA and MSHA. That is their level of authority, and their expertise makes the employees of those organizations qualified to work at that level, right? So that's my thought on it. Sure.
Okay. Next one, what does the Santaquin City Council feel should be the typical hours of operation for mining operations?
Sun up, sun down. I just was getting the conversation started, guys.
What are the standard hours?
So right now, in the draft that we had it from 7 to 7. 7 to 7. They wanted typical, and again, the key word with this question is typical hours. They want it to be 6 to 10.
6 a.m. to 10 p.m. so that they could run 2 shifts.
2 shifts, but then also many of the projects you got and whatnot, they operate at night.
Especially in the summertime.
So my thought, my original thought was, potentially the 7 to 7, but then you could apply for a certain project or a certain time window to extend it. It's just not a free for all 6 to 10 the whole season long, right? It could be.
The hours in the winter are gonna be,
Cut way back.
especially with a
Sure.
hot batch plant, the hours in the winter are going to be greatly diminished
They'll be
because of
doing
the
repairs
because of the air temperature.
Yes.
Because the product has to be kept at a certain temperature or it can't be used.
Yeah.
And so, so I think in the summer, what you're saying with sun up, sundown, that is, what did they say, 7 to 10?
They said
6 to 10.
So
So that's, I mean, in the summertime, that's pretty close. That's pretty close to sun up, sundown in the summertime, which is their busiest season, for asphalt and road and stuff like that.
So
It's the busiest building season.
What the residents are gonna hear is that conveyor going all the time
Yeah,
across the railroad tracks.
yeah.
It's
I
gonna
agree.
be buffered by the hill somewhat for the work of the mine,
Yeah.
where they're mining. But that conveyor is the one that's gonna,
How far away can you hear that?
I agree. Of course,
you're
Half a
gonna.
mile.
I used to live
Half a mile?
a quarter mile from Hill Air Force Base,
Where-
and when I moved
the way
away
that
from it,
sits.
I miss the sounds of the jets.
So to be clear, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. is consistent with our current construction schedule in the city. Anybody that's building a home or a building or working on a road or a booster pump station or a tank can start making noise and working at 6 a.m. and has to shut down by 10 p.m. So the 6 to 10 is actually congruent, is actually in agreement with our current city code as far as construction hours. Now, mining operations and crushing and other things are probably, not considered in there, obviously, but 6 to 10 is consistent with our current city construction standards.
Well, but I think potentially too, if you allow them to do a 6 to 10, your window of operation potentially can shrink, because if we restrict them down to one shift, you're only gonna
Right.
get so much done.
Right.
And so then the period is just long.
Right.
So thoughts, direction?
I just have one more, it's not even, probably not even involved in this, but one of the things I'm noticing with other mining operations is how bad the roads are being chewed up. Now,
Especially
And-
11 days.
oh, boy, you get there.
Go on.
Anyway, I've noticed out in the county that, especially over there by Craigwood Quarry, that road, I mean, literally, here we are, just coming out of winter. I'm sure when the heat of the summer comes, that road's gonna get chewed up more. I guess the question is where does this fall back on these mining operations, on who's gonna repair that?
Well, and so to answer that question, and I guess I'll say thank you for your direction on some of these policy decisions. This is just tip of the iceberg, and nothing's been decided tonight. This is just direction we got from you so that we can continue to mold this draft. All these things are things that we've already talked to them about. We're providing a number of staff comments to the suggestions that they've made from more of a technical standpoint. This is not the last time you'll see this. This is just direction on these specific points. So all the other points that are, you know, bouncing around in your head, they will come if you.
And rest assured, Sunrock has been really good about following our direction, driving, bringing the trucks in and the way out, you know, putting the scales where we've asked them to put them. They've been really, really good about that.
So to go along with the roads, there is a concern there. We've had a discussion with them about, well, a subdivision road that was built for subdivision traffic is obviously not sufficient for heavy trucks. And how does that weigh in? Their kind of take on it is, well, we pay gas tax and fuel tax. You get our B and C road funds already. Why should we be paying
That wouldn't
them?
even
So
scratch
there
that.
is two sides to that argument.
That wouldn't even scratch that road.
But what we have indicated to them is that if there happens to be a need there, we're gonna have to discuss that need with them to make sure that we can, because obviously we're not gonna allow trucks on a residential road that's not built for trucking. It's the same thing that we did out on our parkway, where we put our parkway in and built a very nice road. The last thing we want is double belly dumpers running down that road and destroying it because they're too heavy, because we didn't design it to UDOT standards. We built a good road, but it's not a UDOT road. And that's, we have had that discussion, and that will be part of the continued discussions that we have with them, because there is some language in there that we need to work on with them as we bring this forward. So we are looking at that as well, Dave.
Okay, we're done with that, I think. All right, reports, City Manager Reeves.
I know I have several items, but I can't think of them after this past week, so I'll bring it next time unless the council.
Any questions? If not, Assistant City Manager Norm Beagley.
So we're continuing to work on our master plans, water and PI. We're updating our sewer treatment side of the master plan right now, as was indicated a couple of months ago and authorized by the council to move forward with that. We're working on the design for the frontage road at Center Street and the realignment of the irrigation company property intersection. That's moving forward. We have several other projects and just supporting development. The grocery store is actually looking at paving 400 East next week. So they were actually placing a road base today on the area that was cut down between the asphalt and the curb. They will actually be taking a lot of asphalt out and reshaping that road so we get proper drainage. That's supposed to be done next week sometime. I don't know the exact day, but I believe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is next week. Next week they'll be working on that. As well as paving internally, not all of it, but some of the parking lot areas. And we know that they have vendors starting to come in and setting up shelves and cleaning and doing other things. And so they're getting very, very close to.
We're anticipating probably the 20-something of June then.
Yeah, their original date was the 10th of June, but I think they're probably a couple weeks back of that. So I think their goal really is to, and this is just speculation, that their goal really is to be open by July 4th or a little bit before, and they're going to make that, I believe. They still have a lot of work to do, but they're moving along pretty good. Yeah.
The phasing of it is the grocery store and parking lot now, and then the pads, they'll be working on them after that, right?
They actually have made a lot of preparations for the pads now with water lines, and they'll be bringing PI lines in. Most of those pads have already been cut down and tried to be presentable so that they're a little more attractive, I think, to future developers or future occupants. And so, yes, the grocery store and all the roads around and the parking lot is phase one. The fuel islands is not part of phase one. That's a future phase, which is just to the southwest of the grocery store.
That may not happen. They talked about doing away with that idea and maybe just having additional pads in there, but that's remains.
Right, that's something that they would have to bring forward. Again, phase one is just the grocery store, the 500 East, 200 North, 400 East improvements and moving forward that way. So
that idea was tied more to a Ridley's marketplace, I think, since that would have been tied to that, but now this is going to be Macy's.
Yeah.
it may not be part of their business
Debating
model.
whether or not he still
I'm
wants to
fine
have
with
that.
that, yeah.
So, and there's nothing in the works in terms of anybody filling those plans. I mean, I guess, we've heard a couple of them, but nothing that is really, a strong possibility right now.
I thought one time we talked about first two blocks, fourth east would be widened, right?
Oh, it's significantly widened.
Well, I noticed they brought that curb around and sucked it back in. I was just, the question was, is I thought we were widening it, why they, and they say why once they got past, but right at the corner now is gonna have this.
Are you talking about 200 north? Is that what you're talking about? The
It's
very
very
north?
true.
Right off Main Street,
It's very
right off
true.
Main Street as you turn.
So there will be right turn in onlys. So dedicated right turn lanes to get people out of traffic and into the grocery store parking lot. That's what, I believe that's what you're seeing there.
Okay.
That's not widening for travel path. That's a right turn only to get people out of traffic so that people can go farther north and get into the grocery store out of traffic. Much like what we did with the 50s
Right.
entrance a few years ago.
Looks like they're making a parking there for people.
No, there will be no parking, right. Well, they are right now. I saw that happen yesterday. I'm happy to answer any of the questions on projects or concerns that you have as
Any
well.
questions for Ron? All right, Community Development Director Jason Bond.
Okay, I got two things for you. This morning, you saw my email. I appreciate Councilmember Montoya joining in on that Zoom meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and talking about businesses. Unfortunately, we didn't get very many people participating other than Payson City representatives, Santaquin City representatives, and people who are on the board for the Chamber of Commerce. But we did talk a little bit about the survey sent out to businesses. Not a crazy good response. There was 15 responses, but some of the things they talked about were maybe relaxing on like signing enforcement right now. So the idea was thrown out that if you're all right with it, we could allow for this time that we're in to allow for people to have aprons outside that say we're still open and whatever else they want to say to help give them a little bit extra boost to keep their business going. We talked about a couple different ideas. There's going to be a focus on pushing businesses to get online to get their business in the Google search engine so that a lot of people, if they want to know about businesses, they're going to Google it. So we'll continue to think and brainstorm and do whatever we can to support businesses, but that's kind of a report that happened this morning. The other thing I wanted to make you aware of is I've spoken with the representative from Utah State University. We're still trying to get this work meeting to happen. We tentatively, for the 242 visioning process with the Utah State University students. We talked about 2 weeks from tonight in kind of a work meeting setting. I just spoke with Jake Powell earlier this week, and he's still on restrictions from a university standpoint about coming. And we talked about some of these other stakeholders that would need to fly in, Howland's representatives and Rob Warwick and whatnot, who are our major stakeholders. We looked at the calendar, and June happens to have a fifth Tuesday, June 30th. And he said that would be perfect for us. Any later than that, we'd want to just make it happen, whether it's on Zoom or in person. But
Is that remind me when our special meeting to pass the budget?
We will be having a special meeting that night, but it only take about 5 minutes since you're already gathered anyway, just go right into a work meeting.
so if you're okay with that,
You're already here anyway.
Yeah,
That'll make,
might as well.
that's a.
and that'll give us time to talk with stakeholders, and hopefully by that time restrictions will be lessened, and we'll be able to do this in person rather than through Zoom, which is not going to be effective. So with recent things happening, I think we've got some support for seeing this 242 vision move forward. So I wanted to let you know about that and make sure that you were okay with that approach. Well, I have unless you have questions for me.
Councilman Hathaway, anything to report? Nope. You got your new assignments, and then you got board meetings.
Right.
And then we expect a report every council meeting, okay? Councilman Acom.
Yeah, one of my new assignments is Public Works. I talked to Director Jason Calloway today, just to let him know I would be a liaison for them to the council and vice versa. Asked if he needed anything. He said they were doing great right now. Appreciate what the council and city staff have done to help them. So everything's good there. That's all I have.
Good, thank you. Councilmember Montoya.
Yeah, I've requested to be, as mentioned before, put on the planning commission agenda for a week from tonight. the chair of the planning commission has approved that request. And so I will be joining them to begin discussions about the roles, powers, responsibilities of an administrative body and a legislative body, and the responsibilities and expectations for myself as the liaison from council to planning commission, and for a representative from planning commission to council, to try to set up a schedule of occasional visits to meetings and updates, maybe quarterly updates, and things like that, to try to improve communication. As I previously mentioned, I read a lot of planning commission minutes. I talk with planning commissioners occasionally, but it's been brought to my attention that not all of the planning commissioners feel like I'm doing a good job, and not all of them are aware that I read those minutes and that I talk to some of the commissioners to try to stay informed as to what's going on. So I'm going to try to educate them on my efforts and inquire on other requests that they have of what they would like me to do, and meet those expectations as much as I am able according to my schedule.
Which is wide open right now.
No, it's actually not, because I already work from home. And I'm thankful for work. That's a tremendous lesson in my life and for my family. So but yeah, maybe from 6 to 7 in the morning, I'm wide open, but I'm not a morning person. You guys all know that. The other thing is that on Friday, my son and I went to the first annual cherry blossom tour, and it was fantastic. It was so great. We learned so much about our local orchards and growers, and I hope that they make it an annual tradition. And they grow Montmorency's cherries, and those are my favorite. And anyway, it was just really fun. So I would encourage anybody, any opportunity that we have to learn about such a major part of Santaquin's heritage and culture, to learn about the orchards and the growers. For example, does anybody know why they paint the trees white?
I do.
Yeah, so they don't get a sunburn from reflection from the snow in the wintertime.
It'll actually split the trunks.
Right, right. And they have a certain type of apple tree that is planted at an angle. So the apple trees are staggered like this, but they make a V, and they're attached to posts, and they have what's called a dwarf root system. And they use that so that they can plant more trees in a smaller space, and the roots don't branch out quite as much. And anyway, it was fascinating, and it was really fun. And I promised them that I would report that I had been there, and that I had a good time. So youth council is still on hold because of social distancing restrictions, but we communicate with the kids, and they're all reporting to do well. And so, yeah.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Bowman.
I know it's shocking, but I do have something.
Okay, sure.
I have an idea. I had an idea, and I'd be happy to head it up. I was thinking it'd be cool if we did a Santaquin like beautification award. The town I grew up in used to do that. And I don't know, I'd have to get your guys' ideas and thoughts on it, like who nominated who, but like if there's somebody that you see in your neighborhood or a house where they like really work hard to make their yard look really nice and add a lot to it, then they can be nominated and they can get the award, and it's like a sign that you can put in your yard, and maybe they can get like a gift card or something, but they can come be honored at a city council meeting. I think it would help just to clean up and just motivate people to beautify their yard. So if you want, I I don't know, like start working on that. If you guys all think that's a
We were
good
just
idea.
actually, I was just,
That would be
Dan and I were thinking about.
Were ya?
Are we gonna have a beautification committee used to be over there?
Yeah.
Got a volunteer.
There you go.
So the town of Griffin, it was really cool, like people, it was always like a cool thing to go see the house that has the sign, and you keep it there for a month.
A sign, special sign.
That's
Great,
gonna be
great
pretty
story
cool.
episode.
Okay,
You got it. We'll give you some ideas. and
Okay.
Any thoughts, you need anybody to help you?
Dave's willing.
You know, it's not, it doesn't have to be a council member, but. Yeah,
We can put it in the
I like the
newsletter and
idea.
get the word spread around.
you're thinking what I think. Good,
That's all.
okay. Now you have, you know, the times of the museum board meeting
Yes,
and the
I looked them
library
up. I
board?
have them written down at home.
Okay.
I have reached out to both of them, but I haven't heard back.
All right,
We'll make sure that John gets you the invites and the dates on those, so you've got that.
perfect, thank you. Nick?
So we just have our rec board meeting on next Monday, Zoom. So if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns about the rec department, let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going forward.
The rep taxes applications are out.
Yep.
Forward.
Police department get a new officer?
So we had the, last time I talked to Chief first, we had interviews. And they did not find one that they were comfortable with. We do have no new officers started, they came over from Salem. But the last interviews that we did, we narrowed it down to 2, but, maybe the test results and whatnot, just didn't.
I think one seems to
All right, that it? Okay, I have a couple things. What happened at the meeting with the gun range?
That was one of the things we're gonna talk about. I knew there was.
Okay,
We had a meeting, Norm ended it up with the DNR, the County Sheriff's Office, the County Public Works Department, and UDOT. And ultimately, I wasn't there for the second half of the meeting, but the concept is that we do want to shut it down so that it's not going to impact the homes that are out there. But you can't just shut it down without getting them somewhere to go. And we want to create some sort of a place for them to go so that we work with the responsible gun shooters that are out there. The concept of is to shut down the debris basin and to do so right away because it really is no good place and it's not a good location. A lot of shops are coming from the debris basin area. But in the short term, put some signs up in South Bank. However, go in with crews and it may be a combination of all entities participating. If County was not personnel right now, we have personnel that they have equipment, we have equipment. So they may grade out awesome equipment so we can grade out great shooting lanes that are pointed in the opposite direction and make it so that we can put in concrete and firing
Benches.
places and a parking lot. And the parking lot would be in between the homes and the shooting area so that people don't want to shoot towards their own cars. And it's kind of structured that way, put signage up as well. Homes over this ridge, don't shoot this direction the whole day. I think the only other thing is we're talking about whatever signs that go, everything is pending approval of the DNR director. And whatever signs go up, we want to include the logos of every single entity involved so that it's a unified approach. That they call one, we're not pointing fingers like this, we're all together. And that may go into an interlocal agreement with all entities on building this structure.
that's my question. At whose dime is this going to be done?
So really, we're looking at partnership of all entities involved. Our costs would likely be involved in labor and or maintaining it in the long term. If it has to have a lock, we would lock, unlock. If it doesn't have a lock, it would be a combination of RPD and the sheriff's office.
So there's also some timing concerns there as well. Again, the timing would be to shut the debris basin down completely. There's a big problem with trash and couches and washing machines and televisions and stuff there. That would be a no shooting area completely, moving it to the south. But there's also some other issues with potential power lines that are long downrange and that type of thing. So this this is going to be a staged approach. It is going to be something that would be, we do one thing and then we do another and we do another, and it's going to be working through it over time. DNR is going to send us a proposal of what they've talked about with their director, making sure that we're meeting their needs. And quite frankly, we had a great meeting out there. Good minds came together and came up with some good solutions. Again, yeah, it was not without challenges and costs, but trying to, again, safety number one. Everybody was on board with safety of the homeowners that are there, that type of thing. We understand that's the first need. The second need is hopefully not a lot of costs. We even talked about, well, if we have to move material around, do we get a contractor to come in there and harvest the material and give us what we need at the end of the day, but they get something out of it as well. I mean, there's all kinds of different options. There's all kinds of different things. The county, like you say, has got some equipment, and we can put a couple of guys out there and do a lot of grading work to try and get something done to make it considerably safer than it is now, and while still giving people a place to shoot that isn't in Nephi. Because if the feeling was that if it was completely taken away, then the public concern from the other side of, responsible gun owners and that type of thing would be a little bit of a challenge as well.
Right. Was there any homeowners there at the meeting?
There were not any homeowners invited.
Okay, when you hear back from the director or the DNR director, can we put together information for those people up there? And let them
Absolutely.
know?
And communications plan.
Okay.
Yes.
They need to know what happened.
That's correct. Again, this is all pending at this point in time. It is
When you hear,
both areas are DNR property, and so it's under their control. Again, there's talk about joint enforcement and opening and closing of the gates by our guys, if that's the case, to help control it and patrol it and that type of thing. But
perfect, thank you. COVID-19 reimbursement from the federal government. The state received $1.25 billion. The county received $111 million. And they're trying to figure out how to disperse it fairly and equitably. And I've been on a bunch of conference calls this past few weeks trying to determine that. The county's put together a task force that will review all reimbursement from the cities that comes in. It has to deal with COVID-19. So I know our emergency manager for the city, Mr. Lindquist, has been putting together the reports and what expenses have been. They would like them as soon as we can get them in. They would like a little bit more time training this task force, what to look for and what to approve. But there's a lot of money that's going to be put towards COVID-19 related expenses. And so we have a meeting every Friday morning here in the city. Fire chief and administrative director and Ben and I, who else is in?
Police, fire.
Police and fire.
Administration.
We go through and make sure all of our expenses are taken care of. So hopefully we can get that, and the disbursement will be fair and equitable for all of us. I know there's some mayors out there that want to disperse by population because they want the big check and they want to take care of that budget issues that Ben's talked about because they don't know how to stop spending. So
one thing to be clear on that though is that this money that's already come has already come to the county, and the state cannot be used for lost revenue. It can be used for other things like masks and PPE and other things, but it cannot be used for lost revenue.
Bunch of money that came.
That's correct.
Listen, they're going to try and fulfill these costs applicable to the cities and the county out of the 111 million, and then they will take what's remaining and use it for grants or small business loans. So they're trying to be, I think they're doing a good job. We so far, hopefully it will continue that way. I received an email from John Ogden. He said that the studies are about done what would we like in any changes in the development agreement. So I think we can, if you, I don't know, the staff says they haven't heard a thing about the studies, but that was his email to me the other day. Yeah, so if you have any thoughts on the development agreement, be sure to write
Did
them
I lose
down.
my list?
Okay.
No, we haven't, it's just, we really need the studies back before we get into the
Yeah,
meeting.
Right.
I know, and so he's just, he's probably positive about, what's going on, but when that happens, we'll be ready. And when we talked a little bit about recharge and recovery, we still need to get a meeting with the state water engineer, if we can fit it in our busy schedule. We need to find out what's going on with that. I know it's a new one, so we can do that.
It's a new old one.
It's the new one.
She was promoted from who we worked with before, so.
All right, that's all I have. We have a need for an executive session, and it has to do with discuss the pending and reasonable imminent litigation and or purchase, exchange, or lease of real property. I look for a motion to go into that. We have a motion by Councilman Miller. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Montoya. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
So that concludes the YouTube video portion of this meeting.
Turn off your microphone. Put the switch. Lock the doors.
It won't go off, they stay on.